Welcome to the Horse Frog Podcast. I'm Kamran.
And I'm Billy.
Billy, what would you say we do here?
Well, we like to dig deep into a bunch of books and shows and movies that we love.
In excruciating detail, right?
In excruciating detail. And we like to talk about things that we like about them, what they make us think, and what we learn from them. And a lot of times we're going to go off topic, but we're going to bring it back in. Basically, it is just two guys hanging out talking about their favorite stuff. And it's not meant to be a replacement for anything. It's meant to be a companion to anything that we're talking about, any shows, any movies, any books that we're talking about. And we really appreciate you taking the time to be with us today. Hopefully you'll enjoy the show with us.
One final note before we begin the episode. If you would like to support our show, we have a Patreon set up. You can find the link at horsefrogproductions.com. You can also email us with any feedback at contact@horsefrogproductions.com. Depending on the platform you're listening from, it may also be in the episode description. Today, we will be going over episode 8 of The Boys, the Amazon Prime show. This is the season finale, and it is quite the episode.
Oh, absolutely.
For those of you that have listened to us throughout the entirety of this season, we'd like to thank you. As is tradition, we will give you a warning prior to episodes of this podcast covering this show. This show is intended for a mature audience. It is covering topics that include extreme violence and some scenes of sexual misconduct. If these topics upset you, then we do not recommend you continue listening. I do have one addition that I would like to add before we get into this. In episode 5, I was talking about the movie The Highwayman because in the show they had mentioned Bonnie and Clyde. I had mentioned that I really liked the way the director had intentionally not shown their faces until the end of the movie, and I didn't really finish the thought on why I like that so much. You had asked, does that mythologize them? And it does throughout the movie. It really does. There's this mystique about them. You're wondering what kind of people are these? What kind of monsters do this kind of stuff?
Right.
Then when they finally catch up to them, right at the end, as they're about to gun them down, you see their faces.
Right.
And they're just kids.
Yeah. Yeah, they really were.
They're in their 20s. Did you watch it since we talked about it?
No. I haven't. I just know the story. I grew up with the, like I said, growing up in the part of Texas I grew up in the north of Dallas, about 30 miles. Apparently that was their old running grounds. Mm-hmm. And they would run up through there and escape and run from the law through that area on the Highway 5. So I was a little fascinated with them and have studied a little. I've seen the old Warren Beatty, Faye Dunaway version. And, that's almost implicitly following them as versus following the cops. Mm-hmm. So it definitely, glorifies them in that movie. And so I kind of grew up with that mindset. And how everyone always wants to use the idea because they think it's so cool to be Bonnie and Clyde. We were Bonnie and Clyde. I'm like, yeah, they were gunned down in a hail of gunfire. And I'm talking like their bodies were riddled with hundreds of bullets.
Yeah. Well, they were attacking police officers, right?
Yes, they were. Yeah. They were not good people.
Yeah.
They were criminals.
Yeah. Was the general public perception kind of a Robin Hood type scenario where they weren't really distributing wealth, were they? It was just more of a...
No, they weren't. But I think that probably because times were so tough all around, I think people just kind of, a large percentage of people just always like seeing people stick it to the man. And I think that was kind of pretty much what it was, is they were sticking it to him hard, buddy.
Mm-hmm. That's American fascination with outlaws.
Yeah, very much so.
Wild Bill, Jesse James.
Very much so.
You just go down the list.
Yeah. Billy the Kid. They're more like Billy the Kid than
Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid.
There you go.
I don't know. I don't know if they were real, but either way. All right.
Right. No, those were real guys. They were real guys.
Okay, cool. All right. Let's dive into episode 8. The episode begins with quite the scene. I am really taken with this scene. I feel that it is the best scene in the entirety of season 1.
I agree.
Oh, that's awesome. Cool.
Oh, yeah, dude. Well, I mean, think about it. We've been waiting this is the problem with every one of these superhero shows. You have to wait till the end of the season for the excrement to hit the fan and these guys to cut loose. And it's always really great to see someone. Well, I'll say that it's cool to see them cut loose. Let's just say that. And we'll go ahead and get in the scene.
Okay. We see a military incursion. The location is Tal Rifat, Syria. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. It's nighttime. The soldiers are moving in on a compound silently. Suddenly, Homelander lands on the roof of a burned out car, making a ton of noise. He very loudly greets them with, "Howdy, boys." When he realizes they were covertly approaching this building, he starts kind of leaning forward, whispering, apologizing, asking how they're doing. He tells them to go get a smoke or something. He's got this. Before he leaves, he tells them, "You guys,
They're the real heroes.
you're the real heroes." Yep.
He says that around any heroes. I'm air quoting here. Any heroes, he's
Mhm.
always going to say that line.
Right.
I love it.
Mhm.
This time, this is where you can kind of see it not going all the way for true, though. You know, it actually looks more fake now, though. You guys are the real heroes here. I feel it's real fake.
I felt he had his charm switch on.
Did he? Okay.
To me, it was his typical, his positive persona,
Okay.
the public good boy persona.
The million, yeah, right. The million-volt smile.
The million-volt smile, as you've coined it. Yep. Mm-hmm. Inside the warehouse, there are nefarious activities going on. We're shown two men at a table weighing out what is likely heroin.
Yeah.
They're really jamming out to this rendition of Rock the Casbah playing on the radio, this little radio on the table.
I love that.
And I had to look this song up.
I love that. I love that you looked it up. I grew up in the 80s, so but the minute I hear that opening piano strain on that song, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's Rock the Casbah. It's like, I know that song anywhere, but I know it's not the Clash.
Right. It was a little bit different. It had some Middle Eastern.
It's the Middle Eastern vibe to it. Yeah.
Instrument elements to it, right? I had to look this up.
Yeah.
Okay. Because for those of you that don't know, I'm half Iranian, so
digging into them roots.
I like the sound of the drums and their instruments as well. So I looked it up. The name of the song is Rock El Casbah by Rachid Taha. Unfortunately, he died in 2018.
Oh.
He's an Algerian singer.
Was he young when he died, or
no? I think he was born in 59 or something. Okay. He was not super young. What I can tell you is he's an Algerian singer, and he uses an interesting mix of Middle Eastern instruments along with modern drums and electric guitar and stuff.
Right.
So I found this video. It's from a concert from 2004. It was taking place in Mexico City. The video's on YouTube. The first comment in the video, you guys are the real heroes. And I gotta tell you, man, when I see something like this, I love it. You're interested in a song that really left an impression on you, right? You go somewhere and the first thing you see is somebody else was as touched by that as you were.
Right.
Recently, I'll give you another example of this. The last Dune movie that came out, the Sardaukar scene.
Yes.
There was this throat singing going on. I was looking up what exactly is that based on. I come across a 10-hour looped video of like 30 seconds of that scene. And the comments, it's all these people talking about how they wish there was more of this. They want to hear more of this. And then that got me kind of down this Mongolian throat singing rabbit hole. And I found some actual Mongolian throat singer that is really cool. This whole notion that when you're interested in something, you go find something, and then somebody else was led there by the exact same thing. Yeah. It gives you a sense that you're not alone in the world. Like there's somebody out there that feels the same way you do.
Absolutely. One thing that I say, one of the first times I ever had this happen to me would be when you tying music to visuals for me was Clockwork Orange. The use of the classical music with some of that violence in there gets me as excited as some of the other stuff, and I shouldn't be excited during that, but it's I love how that stuff I get and how that impacts me. I'm like you, I get real excited by certain things, and I love that I've found people have that same image, and I'm like, okay, I'm not alone in feeling like a psycho, because I get kind of happy when I see these people doing bad things to great music. I'm like, I get kind of excited by that. It's like, well, you're supposed to. That's how the movie's supposed to make you feel.
Yeah, some things really get me amped up.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, let's continue through this scene. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Homelander greets the men with "Gentlemen." They immediately go for their guns, and he cuts them down with his heat vision. As he's doing this, his vision also cuts out the electrical box, cutting the lights in the warehouse. And then the song that was on the radio is now the soundtrack for the show. So instead of like a little crappy speaker, it's coming out of your speakers that you're listening to the show with.
Yeah.
Homelander, he starts cutting people down left and right with his vision. The people are just being dismembered in the most gruesome fashion.
Yes. Oh, it's ugly.
Gouts of blood going everywhere. Between blasts, his eyes are glowing. It's dark. You can barely see his silhouette and just these red eyes walking
I
around. It's
love
like a
that look.
freaking Terminator, man. It looks so cool.
Yeah.
I had to watch this scene like 7 times in a row. Like that's, I
Okay.
was, I was
Wow.
like,
Wow. Okay.
I was like, this is amazing. I can't believe I didn't remember this from the first time I watched this a couple years ago. I was like, this is incredible.
You know, I can't remember. I mean, I do remember it. I stayed up on it and I just was really amazed by some of that. Like I said, those shots of him scything people in half, and it's so it looks so real. I mean, I think that's what it would look like if someone cut you in half with a laser. It's not clean and pretty. It's like there's going to be some loss of blood, but it's also seared shut. But it's pretty rough, though. I mean, it's not easy to have your legs scythed off in one quick vision blast, is it? It's still going to hurt.
Yeah. Outside, the armed forces are hearing the screams and seeing muzzle flashes inside, and then it flashes red whenever Homelander's blasting somebody with his heat vision.
Right.
They're kind of looking at each other uneasily. Back inside the warehouse, Homelander cuts down 2 women that are frantically scrabbling at a door trying to escape. It's locked and they can't get out. Then he turns and cuts the legs out from somebody else. He's still alive.
Yep.
And Homelander walks up to him. He puts his foot on his head. Then he slowly crushes it. And as he's doing it, he smiles with enjoyment.
Oh, yeah.
This had
He's really big in
that American History X feel to it from the one scene.
I couldn't make it through that movie because that one scene was so unsettling to me. I'm like, oh my gosh, this feels so real. I'm like, I just don't know if I can watch this. And
anybody who's ever seen that movie,
so I've never made it through that. Yeah,
that is what they remember from it. One of the main things. Yeah. It is one of the worst things I've ever seen on a movie. It's that bad, and this reminded me of that.
It does. Well, you can just hear it slow. He's not being fast. He's just slowly, and you hear the bones popping, and he's just pushing real slowly, taking his time like a wine press, going slowly.
He's relishing it.
Oh, he relishes it deeply.
Yep. He walks out of the warehouse. He takes in a deep breath, and he smiles again. Now that he has an excuse that he doesn't have to hold back, we can see what he's like unrestrained. Because
yes,
in the United States or wherever he was acting before, he would have had to justify his behavior in some way.
Absolutely.
Now he has the excuse he needs to just be as destructive as he wants with no repercussions. Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah, it is.
He walks over to the military team telling them, all clear, boys, mission accomplished. Then he hears somebody terrified and running the other direction. They're unarmed, and Homelander just looks, the guy's 150 feet away, and he cuts him in half. And the soldiers are looking at each other because I believe that's probably a war crime. Unarmed person running the opposite direction, shooting him in the back.
Yeah, I'm assuming it is. I don't know for a fact, but I assume that it is.
Yeah. The soldiers, they get a look of horror on their face after this. Then he turns back to them and he says, God bless America. Then he walks up closer to them. He says, Captain, I found this. And he holds up a vial of Compound V. All right. How can a scene this short be this impactful to me? Why do I need to watch it 7 times? So let's go through my philosophy on heroes and villains.
Okay.
Why I like this kind of stuff. To me, a hero is only as good as the villain or the stakes of what they're up against.
Yes, because you and I both have agreed that we like strong villains and good villains.
Yeah, you have to have something.
You have to.
Just really horrifying to stand up to in order for the hero to rise to that level.
Yes.
And if they have no level to rise to, then there's nothing to write home about. There's nothing special about them.
Right.
We've seen Homelander do some bad stuff so far, but the absolute horror that was just displayed in this scene, especially the way it's filmed, it's really masterful.
Yeah, it's beautifully done, despite the carnage.
Yeah,
it looks amazing. I mean, it's like, that's why it's so impactful. It feels real.
Yeah. We already talked about, I really like the song. I'm already amped up.
Yep.
And then, it takes over the soundtrack and we just see him cutting people down left and right. I think what really got me was like just the eyes glowing in the dark. It just looks so sick. And it's terrifying. This dark menace with these red eyes coming after you and there's no escape.
Yeah, that's, oh my word. Yeah, I didn't even think about it like that.
Yeah. I was trying to quantify how I feel watching this stuff. And the only thing I can say is it's exhilarating. And it's not like I'm enjoying it, but
no,
it makes me think, who's going to stand up to this?
Right. That's a
Then you realize our heroes in this show, they're regular humans.
Yes.
And they don't have any special powers. All they have is their ingenuity, and they know what he's capable of, and they're still willing to stand up to him.
Yeah. And I'll say quick. I'm like you with the music moving me real quick.
Mm-hmm.
I gave the Clockwork Orange example, but think about you've seen Apocalypse Now, haven't you?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And that scene with the flight of Valkyries and the air cavalry come rolling in and blowing things up. And that's another great scene of exhilaration. It's not pretty, but there's something exciting about it. The music, I'm assuming the music director in your film crew that, it gives me such respect for those guys, because I don't know how I can pick music that gets people so pumped up for scenes like this.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great skill, and I'm appreciative of it.
Yeah, I agree.
Cool.
Well, we're going to have to do an episode on impactful scenes where the score really left an impression on us, in addition to what was going on in the movie. So we'll make a note and come back to that.
Yeah. And that's something that we could also ask the audience if they had any things that meant something to them.
Yeah.
Impactful moments with music.
If you're interested in sharing some of that with us, contact at horsefrogproductions.com. We'd like to hear it. We could read them out.
There you go.
Yep. Again, my favorite scene in the entirety of season 1. You agree that's your favorite scene as well?
Yeah, I think I agree.
Okay.
I think it is.
Yeah.
It is. It's the greatest. It's the greatest action sequence in the whole. It's like they were. They paced this whole season so masterfully, and to open the episode with that is just like, wow. You just know you're watching a special episode when it starts that harsh.
Yeah. It didn't start off that fast because they were kind of creeping up on the buildings, but once you get in there,
right.
Man, it really takes
once he
off.
gets in there, dude. Because the credits don't even roll till after he cleans that place up, doesn't it? It's like how it shows the boys.
Oh, that doesn't happen until like 2 more scenes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. We get taken to Vought Tower. The way the scene is transitioned is the vial that's in Homelander's hand, the camera zooms in on it, and then when it zooms back out, the Secretary of Defense is holding it in his hand, and he's speaking with Madeline Stillwell in the Vought Tower.
Yeah. I love that guy, too. I love that actor. Yeah. Do you remember him in Justified, Jim Beaver?
I didn't specifically remember what he was from. He looked familiar to me, but now that you mention it, him being in it, I do remember. Yep.
Yeah, he kind of plays good old boys a lot of times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I picked that up.
I like him.
Definitely.
Right. Well, if you're in Justified, they're all good old boys in Justified, apparently.
The Secretary of Defense says the Islamic State is not exactly a hotbed of scientific expertise. He incredulously states, but they've counterfeited this compound V of yours. Madeline says, it seems that way, Mr. Secretary. He wants to know how they got the formula. She tells him Vought has no idea. He thinks she must have some idea. Maybe a tourist shoplifted it from Vaught's lab. I love how he's calling her out on that.
He gets on her hard. I love it.
He also suggests maybe an inside job. She tells him they want to get to the bottom of this as much as he does. His response is priceless. Miss Stillwell, if I had my way, the Justice Department would haul your smug, tennis-toned ass into Congress and make you testify to corporate fraud. She changes the direction of the conversation. She asks him what Lockheed Martin's #1 product is. He doesn't understand the question. She clarifies their top seller, and he should know it since he served on their board of directors. He tells her it's the Patriot missile. She tells him that's correct. Then she says Northrop has the B-2 stealth bomber. She goes on, General Dynamics, the Tomahawk missile, and the M1 Abrams tank. Ultimately, her point is the billions of dollars of equipment that the military has purchased is now a worthless pile of because Naqib and other terrorists like him can flip away the junk like flicking away a flea.
Yeah, and they never answer this nuke question for me, though.
Mm-hmm.
We'll cover that later on. It's like, I know we don't ever nuke anybody. Question is always in my mind, if you mean everything, so they can survive a nuke. It's kind of my go-to. It's like, so they can survive a nuke.
I guess the damage,
I don't know why,
the collateral damage of a nuke, it's a scorched earth option, right?
Oh yeah.
Once they start getting thrown, it's over anyway.
It is.
Stillwell says it doesn't matter where heroes come from, and it doesn't matter how the enemy got Compound V. What matters is they've got it, and it's a whole new world now. And there's only one company that has the product to fight back. her company, her product. Well,
masterfully done.
Yeah,
still
when
well.
she has the upper hand, she really puts the screws to some people.
Ooh, she does, babe. She really puts it to them.
Yep. We go to Butcher. He's on the phone with Susan. She's telling Butcher that the Pentagon has decided to keep the Compound V classified. He's shocked, exclaiming, "Classified? What the are you on about?" Susan tells Butcher, because Naquib is out there, the U.S. government needs to keep Vought happy now. Butcher pushes back, telling her that Vought are the ones that created the. She says there is no solid proof on that. Butcher tells her he rescued the proof from a basement and he has her sitting on a bloody bog as they speak.
Ooh, the bog.
A bog? Yeah.
Yes, I love the toilet reference in it from England and Scotland's the bog.
I did not pick up on that. Thank you.
It's the toilet. You're welcome.
Okay, nice.
I've read a ton of Garth Ennis. I've read Bog at least 1 million times in his books.
Is he from the UK?
He's Scottish, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. So yes.
Okay.
But he's something else. He's a real funny writer.
Nice.
Like I say, we'll cover some more of Ennis later on because he's just on fire.
I mean, if any of his other stuff's like this, it's awesome.
The Preacher, like I say, to me is almost like a template for how he had become a certain type of writer. It got real famous doing John Constantine Hellblazer, and made this comic Preacher. And Preacher is just as violent and disgusting and brutal and vulgar. It has everything that this has. I tried the show, The Preacher, but it just didn't capture the flavor I was looking for. And I was kind of disappointed because I didn't realize it till watching this episode that Rogen is actually one of the producers of The Boys. And he actually produced The Preacher as well.
Which Rogen?
Seth Rogen.
Okay.
And he had produced The Preacher, I believe, as well. And I was kind of disappointed with that. But they're both Garth Ennis, both the same producer who obviously wants Ennis to succeed in America.
Mm-hmm. MM is on the phone with a reporter trying to sell the story. They hang up on him. Poor MM. Huey is sitting sadly and looking at his phone. He's looking at a picture of him and Starlight. Butcher is still trying to get Susan to act on the evidence he gave her. She tells him the military deal is signed and sealed. Does he think that one mute girl is going to change that, especially coming from the fugitives that killed Translucent? And here we go.
Here we go. Wow.
Butcher questions her about that statement. She says Vought insisted and the DOJ agreed. The boys are wanted men now. After all they went through to be backstabbed because the government just had to bend over for Vought. That's rough, man.
That's got to leave a mark right there. That's hard. That's bad.
It is.
I mean, because they've pinned all their hopes on this, and all of a sudden they're just left out to dry.
Yeah. MM is banging on the bathroom door. Kamiko has been in there for a long time. She's looking at herself. She finds a comb and starts combing her hair. Outside the bathroom, Butcher is telling Susan that he gave her the Compound V. He gave her everything she asked for and more. He trusted her, and this is the thanks he gets. She assures him that she will still protect their families. He tells her, yeah, and keep your career bloody safer. He asks what about him and the boys? She tells them to run for their lives and apologizes and hangs up on him.
Wow.
He pretends to stay on the phone because the boys kind of picked up on his tone a little bit. They start paying attention to what he's saying. He pretends to finish up with the conversation in a positive manner, then hangs up. He turns to the boys and tells them, well, that's all under control, isn't it? Do you think it's right of him to not come clean with them at this point?
No.
Yeah.
Because, well, partly it's like, he's worked with these guys. He knows what to expect from them.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why you wouldn't trust him more. And he obviously has trust and faith in them, but not trust enough to bring them into that one. I think it would have helped if he'd have told them.
Yeah.
But we're going to cover that real quick right next. But but at the same time, he should have told them. It's kind of funny. It's weird to see him as the leader, but everyone seems to look to MM for focus.
Yes.
Because he's got that way of his calmness and his coolness. And that's why Butcher has in that position.
Frenchie looks at MM and says, oh, we need to split up. MM confirms and they start to move. They don't even think for a second after Butcher tells them this.
They obviously have been with him too long.
Yeah.
like, wait, you told us that in '88, man. What's up with it?
Butcher asks what the hell they're doing. They aren't done yet. MM tells them, the hell we ain't. We got Vought, the Stoops, and the feds on our. Frenchie says he's going to Montreal. MM asks how he's going to get his crazy girlfriend over the border. Frenchie corrects him, telling him she has a name. It's Kimiko. Kimiko, he says. Butcher tells them to shut their traps. They're on the verge of nailing these and that they want to cut bait and run before they played their final card. MM wants to know what that is. Butcher asks them to give him a couple of hours and asks Huey to come with him.
At least he doesn't tell Huey that he always says, you're going to love this. You're going to love this. At least he didn't say that to him, so he's not scared.
That's always the precursor.
I get nervous anytime I hear that. Yeah, that's the danger sign. You're going to love this. It's like, no.
Right. Huey doesn't get up, and Butcher has to clap and say, come on, son, chop, chop. Starlight is in her mom's kitchen back in Iowa. She is holding a pipe in her hands. She arrived unannounced, and her mom walks in the kitchen and is scared. The mother's happy to see her, mentioning she didn't say she was coming. Starlight doesn't greet her. Speaking of the pipe, she says, I hid this under the floorboards right after Daddy left. I thought that maybe he would come back for it, but she shakes her head and says, it still smells like him. The mom says it was a bad habit and that his father smoked a pipe. I've always hated the smell of cigarette smoke myself, but pipe smoke always smelled so good to me. I don't know what it is about it.
Oh, and I'm an ex-cigarette smoker, and cigarette smoke never particularly smelled good to me, except when I quit, and you'd smell them, light them up at first. You're like, oh, I want one. But those pipes always smell, man, those smell so good. I don't know what it is. I don't know how to describe it either. I mean, it's like, it's warmth, it's books. I don't know. There's all kinds of cool things that I associate with pipes for some reason.
Leather-bound books.
Yes.
In a wood-paneled library.
Yes, big leather chairs and guys drinking whiskey, I think, and reading awesome books, I guess. I don't know. I don't like whiskey per se, but it's like, I
was going to say, do you know anyone that still smokes a pipe? And vaping doesn't count?
No. That's true. It does not. All I see are people, like I've told you, I have an inordinate amount of smokers in this town. In this small company I work for, half the people smoked. And that's more than that smoked in the fries when we had 200 people working there. So I find that very weird, but there's either smokers or vapors in this town, but I have yet to see any old geezers with a pipe. It is a very nostalgic smell, isn't it?
Yeah. The mom is walking away, and Starlight asks, what's Compound V? The mom stops and says, Compound V? I don't know, sweetheart. Should I? Starlight gets up and walks over to her mom. She asks, how old was I? The mom doesn't respond, doesn't even look at her. She's keeping busy with filling the coffee machine. Starlight asks, how old was I when you let Vought pump me full of drugs? The mom tries to claim she doesn't know what she's talking about, but Starlight loudly interrupts her. How old when you let them turn me into a freak? The mom says she's not a freak and tells her to never say that. Starlight takes this as confirmation of complicity from her mom, saying, so, it's true. She kind of starts taking deep breaths. The mom asks if Vought told her all this. Starlight tells her, no, a friend told me. She then turns to her mom and asks, how much did they pay you? The mom says it wasn't about money, and Starlight asks again, how much? The mom tells her there was no money. They just paid for the medical bills. That's it. She did it because they promised she'd have a chance at an extraordinary life, to be strong and successful and special. Who wouldn't want that for their... She tries to take some of Starlight's hair and put it behind her ear at this point. Starlight recoils from her, saying, you made me think I was chosen by God. The mom says she was. God brought Vought into their lives, and that made this possible.
Poor excuse.
Starlight yells, bull. You did.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you want to add something there?
Oh, I agree with Starlight on this one. The God brought Vought into their lives, made this possible. It's like, no, you can read that in there if you so choose, but I don't believe that you like that idea. And she's a pageant mom, as we've talked about. It brought it out before that child was even born, apparently.
Starlight yells, bull. You did. And then you controlled every single minute of it. You woke me up every day at 5 a.m. to train for those stupid pageants and the tap dancing and the taekwondo. The mom's response is what we can expect from her. She says, I gave up every moment of my life and I was happy to do it. This was
Our
our
dream.
dream. Starlight yells, this was your dream. I never got a chance to choose my own dreams. No wonder I don't know who I'm supposed to be. The mom says, Annie. Starlight realizes something as she sees the pipe on the kitchen table. She looks at her mom and asks, was it really bad investments? The mom doesn't understand. Starlight says, you told me that Daddy left because he lost all of our savings. The mom kind of gets a sad look on her face and says, he agreed to all of it. And then one day, he didn't. So he walked out on us. Starlight says, maybe he didn't want to lie to me. The mom has a little pity party here. She says, oh, so I'm the monster? You have a good life. People would give anything to be what you are. Starlight turns to leave, and the mom grabs her arm and tells her she thought she did what was right. Starlight just looks at her for a bit, doesn't say anything, then leaves. The mom tries to stop her. Quick side note, in the background, the mom has some Starlight posters framed on the wall. One of them is for the Teen Roundtable, and the other is a Starlight Grand Debut poster.
I saw the Starlight poster. I didn't know which one it was. I was kind of troubled that you examined it so closely, but I'm not really. I'm glad you looked that close, but
I mean,
no, it doesn't.
This surprises you?
No, it does not surprise me, brother.
How many posters have I noticed so far?
Yes. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You know, the burgeoning Starlight obsession. I just thought it was interesting. The mom had these framed in her kitchen. And they weren't necessarily posters. They almost looked like blown up magazine covers more than anything.
I get one of them looked like a poster. I didn't really catch the other.
The Deep is talking to the Vought office manager. His name's Jeff.
I love Jeff. He's hilarious.
They're in Sandusky.
He's kind of a goofball.
Yeah, he's an interesting character.
Yeah, he is.
A little bit soft spoken, not the most confident individual.
Yeah. Especially to be in a city count. I'm assuming some kind of city ship position, you know.
No, he works for Vought. I think he's the regional manager that they have there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he's kind of handling the Deep now that he's been assigned here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. The Deep wants to knock back some of his per diem. Jeff comments on how fancy the bottle of alcohol is and asks what they're celebrating. The Deep is making some type of blended fruit alcoholic drink. I'm not much of a drinker, so I don't know what he's making. Maybe it's strawberry daiquiris or something.
I don't know what it is, but I think it's like it's supposed to be a fruit smoothie, but it's like half and half vodka, half and half fruit. You know, so it's half vodka, half fruit. I'm like, okay, so I think all the nutritional values probably washed away by all the vodka, I'm guessing.
The Deep is surprised and says, what are you talking about? The 7 getting called up. He asks if Jeff knows the reason the Navy discontinued the sea mammal mine clearance program.
Say that 3 times fast.
There's no way. Not even going to try it.
I'm sorry. Okay. Sea mammal mine clearance program.
You want to give it a shot?
No, absolutely not. I said it quick once. I'm pretty proud of myself on that one.
Okay. Yeah, we could cheat. I could cut it together 3 times.
There you go. Yeah. Yes. Well, yes. You can have me say that then. Sea mammal mine clearance program. Sea mammal mine clearance program. Sea mammal mine clearance program.
The Deep says it's because it costs too much to train the dolphins. But with the Deep on board, it's like a pickup game of basketball. Now, let me get a better understanding of what he's saying here. A pickup game of basketball with a mine clearing program. What are you going to tell the dolphins to go trigger the mine? That's not a pickup game of basketball. Are you convincing them to sacrifice themselves or what?
No, I believe that what he is talking about in my mind is the fact that this was something that we had tried to do, and I'm not sure of any success rate on this, but I could see the cost being exorbitant. But if this guy could just go immediately and they could just tell you where they were, because that's all that you want to know is where the mines actually are. These guys could tell him right where it was. He'd be like, there, and there. And I think he's equating the quick game of pickup game of basketball as an easy win.
Okay.
Is how I take that.
Seems like he'd want to use a porpoise, not a dolphin, right?
Right. Especially because he makes such a big deal about the porpoise.
The porpoise was that's what found the case that had translucence remains.
A porpoise.
Mm-hmm. The Deep tells Jeff he always wanted to lead his own unit. It's like a dream come true for him. As the Deep is talking, Jeff appears to be trying to tell the Deep something, but the noise from the blender interrupts him. The Deep turns off the blender and smells the drink. He thinks it smells like a comeback. He turns around and asks Jeff, so when? Jeff asks, when what? The Deep asks, when do I ship out? Jeff says, oh gosh, you know that water park's opening up a new splash zone, and they are real excited to have you cut that ribbon. He starts chuckling. The Deep laughs and says, you know, I'm seriously leaving, Jeff. Ohio. Jeff puts his drink down and says, here's the sitch. I spoke to New York, and you're not so much leaving. He looks down and won't meet the Deep's gaze.
Where do you think the Deep got the idea that he was going to be training dolphins to sweep mines?
The Navy had a program involving sea life.
I know they did, but how did he? I'm curious why he latched onto that.
That's the only way he can shoehorn his way into it, right?
Is he just trying to? Oh, is that what he's trying to do? Okay,
that's the only thing I can envision.
I didn't know if he was trying to just force his way into that, or okay. I didn't know if it was something that this guy Jeff had told him he might be doing, or something like that. It's like I was just curious.
Yeah, he is making this entire
mental gymnastics. Is that what it is?
Absolutely, he's making this up in his mind, and he's got this whole scenario played out where him and a bunch of superstar dolphins are going to go and they're going to save the Navy from Russian mines.
Have you ever seen any of my work? Back when I was a kid, there were these Doberman gang movies about Dobermans. I just have the same thought. It's like 70s, but it's a gang of porpoises in the Deep. Oh my gosh, that's terrible. Oh, I have a great, it's kind of, it's reminiscent of like, did you ever watch American Dad?
I've seen a couple episodes, but not many.
Do you ever, okay, I like that one because it's more cogent and coherent than Family Guy, but they rip on the 70s television shows a lot. And one of them they do is that Steve and the alien do are Wheels and the Leg Man. And it's real 70s, floating kind of credits from the 70s, a la Charlie's Angels or, Knight Rider from the 80s or something like that. But I can just see all this in my brain. I'm sorry, it's just too funny. Cheesy, bad, Deep with his own unit of dolphins. I'm sorry, porpoises.
Well, he said dolphins this time.
Oh, dolphins. Sorry,
yeah, but the porpoise was his best friend that found the case, right? I don't know if it's his best friend, but it was his friend that found the case. Yeah.
It was a close friend. He said a close friend.
A close friend. A confidant. Yeah. After Jeff notifies him that he is not leaving, the soundtrack, we hear Everybody Hurts by REM start playing. The Deep asks, what? Jeff tells him they didn't share details, but the boys in marketing have created a primo tag for him, the Savior of Sandusky.
Also, when the Deep says what, if you listen to that music, it has another one of those winding down music moments.
Does it?
When yes, it's about 2 or 3 times. There's a couple different times around Deep. If you'll pay attention, it's real subtle. It's not as in your face as some of the other times. But it's a little, you'll hear some, not the REM music, but the other music. It kind of just does this winding down. Very interesting. As you watch his, as he deflates, the music so deflates.
I guess with the Deep, sometimes I'm just trying to get through the scene. There's several of them where I actually had to skip through.
Yeah, there was some fast forward stuff.
Yeah.
Yes, I skipped on this episode a little bit. The body shaving scene.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, we'll get there. Yeah. The Deep is hit pretty hard by this information. He goes and stares out the window. It's a 1,000-yard stare.
You mean he doesn't want to be the savior of Sandusky?
No, he does not.
Don't even know what's in Sandusky. Not much, apparently, but a water park. A heck of a water park.
Sandusky has, well, I'll tell you, they have Cedar Point there, which if you like roller coasters, when I went there when I was in high school, my parents took my brother and I there, and they at that time had 6 world records. And since then, I believe other roller coasters have overtaken a number of them. But if you like roller coasters, there is a lot of good stuff there. Outside of that, I did not see much that would want to have me stick around. But we didn't really explore that much. I mean, our main goal was to go to the roller coaster park. So,
right, I get that.
Butcher and Huey arrive at their destination. It's a remote house surrounded on all sides by trees. Not a single neighbor in sight.
Man, and that, I don't know if it's here in a later scene in the same area, but that house that she lives in, man, that's a gorgeous place. The surroundings, that view, that house, oh my word. It's like heaven on earth, dude.
Yeah, it's kind of on the side of a hill, a lot of windows, beautiful view. It's amongst a bunch of pine trees, or I don't know if they're necessarily pine trees, but some type of coniferous tree.
Big boy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very impressive.
They go around the back. They find Mallory. She has some binoculars and is staring at something through them. She greets Butcher when he walks up as William. She's still looking through the binoculars when she greets him. He asks her what she's looking at out there. She tells him eastern meadowlarks. It was either bird watching or alcoholism. So, birds. She then says, I thought we agreed that you were never going to come out here. He says, yeah, well, you taught me a thing or two about broken promises, didn't ya?
Ouch. Goodness.
Butcher introduces Huey and tells Mallory they're working with MM and Frenchie. He says, I got the boys back together. Mallory turns to Huey and introduces herself, saying, I'm the founder of your little club. Then she turns to Butcher and says, so let me hear it. He tells her that he needs her help. She says she can't and gives an excuse about needing to take a picture of an owl. Butcher steps closer and tells her he didn't want to come here, but he needs her to help. And she's going to help. She says, why is that? He steps in front of her and says, because you owe me. You owe me. Damn it. Have we ever seen Butcher this vulnerable?
No. He's been happy in the flashbacks we've seen, but not vulnerable. Those are different qualities.
Yeah, he's really vulnerable in this scene.
And he's really desperate, and he sells it.
I think this is his last resort.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this is Mallory. This is the Mallory that we've heard so much about. We'll get into this scene. We'll get into more about what's going on, but we know that Mallory's grandkids were killed.
Mm-hmm.
So that's mentioned already. So that's fair game.
Right. Kamiko is still in the motel in the bathroom, and she's painting her nails. She's cleaned herself up a lot. She looks quite nice now. Her hair's combed. She appears to have put some makeup on. Obviously she bathed.
Oh yeah, she looks great.
Yeah. She looks normal, not like a street urchin or something.
She looks like a normal, pretty little girl. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Not like she's been kept in a basement for 6 months.
Oh, yeah. She's looking at herself in the mirror and actually tries to vocalize something. She can't quite get it out. She hears a noise and rushes out of the bathroom, only to see that everything looks normal. Frenchie is impressed with her appearance and compliments her. As he does, some gas grenades blast through the window. He immediately launches himself off the bed, shoves her back in the bathroom, and tells her to run. He even grabs a jacket or a towel or something, and after he closes the bathroom door, he starts putting it under the crack so the gas won't go in there. I mean, he reacted split second. It was crazy.
Yeah.
First thing he did.
That's like the guys that'll throw themselves on a grenade, dude. It's the same mindset. Other people over themselves, man. That's a great love, man.
Yeah. Frenchie and MM get knocked out by the gas, and one of the aggressors kicks the bathroom door in. He's able to throw Kamiko against the wall, but she kicks his leg out from under him, snapping it. She launches herself through the bathroom window, but as she does, it's like a pretty narrow, tall strip of a window above the shower. One of the assailants, she's working her way through the window, and he stabs a little syringe in her leg and puts something in there. Yeah. It's going to knock her out. She tries to run, but she doesn't get far. She falls to the ground and crawls under a truck in the parking lot of the motel. She sees her hands in front of her face, and they're filthy again. Her nails that she just painted are all messed up. And the assailants drag her out from under the truck and take her away. And it looks like her face is dragging on the ground, and they don't do anything to try and...
I know it.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Tough. I've had a friend drugged that way by cops, and let me tell you don't come out looking normal.
Oh, man, that sounds rough.
Your face looks like he looked like he was drugged over pavement. You can tell.
Mallory is telling Butcher she has nothing else to say. She can't help him. He tells her she's going to have to do better than that. She asks why. He says because she made him a promise. She tells him, but then my grandchildren got incinerated. Tends to change one's perspective. There weren't even teeth left. Lamplighter had burnt them alive so thoroughly.
Wow.
She excuses herself and says it was a pleasure meeting Huey, then says bye to Butcher and starts walking away. Can you imagine what that would be like, having that weight on your shoulders, being responsible for the death of your grandchildren?
Oh, goodness, no. I know that's the kind of stuff that kills people. I mean, they'll drink themselves to death or ruins marriages or drive you to kill yourself, literally. So
Butcher asks her, what about what you've done? She turns around and says, what I've done to who? Butcher says, to me, damn it, to me. You trained me up, manipulated me, aimed me at Homelander like a howitzer. And then when it didn't suit you anymore, you just threw me away. She tells him not a day goes by where she doesn't regret it. He says, day late, dollar short, love. Now I'm going to finish what you started, and I need your help. Please. Wow, we have never seen him act like this so far. Would you say this is true desperation, or is he treating her this way because this is the only way he can get her to help?
I don't know. I think that could be his way of trying to push her over the edge, because maybe that's how she pushed him in the past, or maybe got him to do things. And also, you got to imagine this too. I mean, imagine if this was Huey coming to Butcher in the same scenario, saying, "You taught me everything, you wound me up, pointed me, and then set me down. What am I supposed to do when I need help?" And it's a very similar situation. I'm just curious. I'm like you. I don't know. I don't know if it's because if that's his manipulation tool, or or if he's just making the desperate, the Hail Mary pass here.
Yeah, just the word "please" really caught me off guard. Just
right?
Based off of not any other point in this season has he acted this way or said anything remotely like that.
Yes, I don't think he's ever said please at all in an episode.
Yeah.
He's been polite, but I don't recall please unless it was real sarcastic. But I'll have to look into that.
Yeah. Mallory tells him he can leave with something as long as he promises to never come back. She name drops Madeline Stillwell, saying Homelander is her main account, and they have a special relationship.
Yes, they do.
It's complicated, intimate, hard to quantify.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Mallory tells Butcher she doesn't know if Homelander has a weakness, but if he does, Stillwell will know it. Butcher looks at her for a moment, then he tells her goodbye, addressing her by her first name, Grace. As Butcher is walking away, Mallory tells him, you want to kill yourself? That's your right. I won't stop you. But Billy, not the others. She then turns to Huey and tells him, vengeance isn't a path to glory, Hugh. It's a one-way ticket to a dead end. Looking at birds.
Yeah, and we've more than once mentioned the dig two graves metaphor for vengeance, because she might as well be dead here. She stopped living. She's just existing.
Yeah, I agree. She doesn't seem to have much spark left.
Nope.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it seems like it's been snuffed.
A-Train goes into a clothing store. He's got a cast on his leg, and he's using crutches on both sides. He's in incognito mode. He takes a bit of time fumbling to open the door, and two young people, they're a couple, they walk up on the other side of the door, and they let him hold the door open for them, and then they don't help him. They just kind of walk through. It's kind of an move, if you ask me. Dude, they could have held the door for him,
That is the worst. I mean, come on, dude.
Yeah, it was pretty messed up.
I don't like A-Train, but the guy's on crutches. Hold that door for that fella.
Yeah, it was. I just noticed that. I thought it wasn't very friendly.
It is not.
We're treated to a display of the Shockwave XLR8 shoe. The shoes are some type of, they have this damper on them. There's a switch that allows you to switch between walking and running.
Talking about the excruciating detail, brother. Are you frame by framing this show?
Yeah, well, I mean, if I'm typing up the notes as I go, I keep pausing it. So I notice, it's like a still frame, right?
That's cool. All right. I love it, dude. I did not notice it had a switch.
Yeah, it's like a metal switch. It's kind of cool. The top of the display says, fastest man, fastest shoe.
Ouch.
A-Train is looking at the display. Yeah, it obviously bothers him. He notices an old white security guard eyeballing him. He notices this security guard is repositioning to keep an eye on him, and he kind of confronts him about it. He says, can I help you? Some other people in the store, they're relatively young. They recognize A-Train. They start filming him on their cell phones. A-Train hasn't seen this yet. A-Train is confronting the guard about him only watching him, implying that it's due to his race. He asks if the guard knows that he's actually A-Train, and the guard steps up to him kind of in an intimidating manner. He says, yeah, and I'm Homelander. He then kind of looks around and he notices all the people that filming them, and then he realizes it is A-Train. He apologizes for his mistake and says, we're good. Then he walks away. And A-Train, he's indignant. He's saying, oh, wait, so now that you know I am A-Train, now we're good? And the guard is still being apologetic. He's trying to de-escalate
Right.
and A-Train blows up at him. And everyone's filming the scene. A-Train blows up at all of them too. What are y'all looking at? So you have a lot of experience with loss prevention. Do you have any
Yes.
thoughts on this situation you want to discuss?
Well, I'm not sure. I'm not that guy, but as the late great Fry's Electronics has taught us, is that we don't watch people, we watch the merchandise. It's kind of like fishing. So I don't know if this guy's watching the merch or watching A Train, but I'm assuming that for the television show's sake, he's watching A Train because he is an African American, and that is to be the message observed on this episode. I think, but I'm lucky. This guy had to work in a uniform. I mean, I got to be plain clothes. So I've shopped next to people I've busted later, and they've seen me. Didn't know I was. They thought I was a customer until I pull a badge on them at the door and bring them back inside. So I have a different. It's a different scenario for me.
Yeah, I remember one time. This was at the store we worked at. I was sitting in the weekly video conference. I think it was on Thursdays, where they're going over the weekend sale, what's going on sale, all that kind of stuff.
Yes.
All of a sudden, I hear one of the exit alarms going off. And I was the audio video manager. It was one of the exits in my department, and apparently, a gentleman had gotten into my backstock area. He got two pretty large televisions, expensive ones too. He knew what he was looking for.
Yes.
Put them by the back door. They had a truck waiting outside. They just loaded them in the back of the truck and just took off. Very brazen. Yes. It was incredible.
You know, that was really funny is when after that era, I was still not LP at the time, but I remember that incident very clearly because I went to LP not too long after you left. And that really was one of the first grab and run incidences that we had. And it became a really bad and big thing to do. We had groups that, you remember that enormous complex next to Fry's. There's like 20 apartment complexes all built into one giant complex. And so this guy was hiring, basically what he was doing is taking some of those young kids that live next door, and he would probably give them 20 or $50 to run in our store and cut security cables on the laptops, and they'd run out that side there, and by the time you could even make it to the door, they're over the fence in the apartment complex and in a truck that's waiting for them and out. And those guys would hit every store in Texas in one day.
Wow.
That's becoming an organized retail crime thing, especially like we have this problem with the store I work for now, except I don't have it at my location because I'm not off an interstate. But all the stores that have interstates, this is a massive problem because these people can jump on an interstate within a minute of hitting you, and they're impossible to track until they get caught for something else.
Yeah, it's crazy, man.
It's very crazy. Very brazen, like you said.
If I remember correctly, that group that did that one with the TVs, they had hit Walmart for like $350,000.
Goodness. I think you're probably right.
They eventually caught them, but they had been hitting various Walmarts for a long time. It's just it's wild, man.
It's amazing, dude. Yeah.
Butcher is about to drive up to the motel where they're staying. Something clues him in that there's a problem, and he just keeps driving straight, doesn't even turn in. Huey tells him that he missed the turn, and Butcher tells him to keep his eyes to the front, and he's quite urgent about it. He repeats himself. Butcher says the boys are gone. Huey says, what? Butcher says someone grabbed them, and Huey wants to know how Butcher could possibly know this. Butcher tells him the window's new, the front path is scrubbed, and there's a black van with flowers on it, probably full of waiting to jump us. Can you imagine having to have this much situational awareness at all times?
Oh, no, I can't, dude. Like I say, I am a person that when I'm out of my house, I'm always pretty situationally aware. I think my job has elevated me to be, again, doing loss prevention will make you more that way as a rule of thumb. But as a guy, I'm kind of that way anyhow. I look around and I'm still freaked out that people will walk out of a building with their head buried in their cell phone and not look once at somebody walking up to them. I don't see how people look. That drives me nuts. I cannot get on the phone until I'm in my car or something like that, at least. I have to get in my zone.
I agree with you that while I have situational awareness, I'm always aware of my surroundings. This level of detail, your nerves would be shot.
It would kill you.
Because it's not just noticing. Yeah. It's not just noticing that there's a person behaving in a certain way, or the car is moving towards you at this speed, or whatever's going to directly impact you. It's the minutia. It's literally what we're doing with this show in real time at all times. Well,
and for me, what's so funny, the only thing that I spotted, is the van. We know the van is the flower van, of course, is full of black ops guys. It never dawned on me, and that because they show that window for that quick, and you're like, how does he spot the driveway being cleaned, the new window? So I guess they didn't even throw dirt on the window. So I mean, yeah, his situational awareness is off the charts.
Huey asks if it's Vought. Butcher thinks it's someone else doing their dirty work for them, probably some Fed Black Ops unit. Butcher drives them to a secluded area. He pops the trunk. We can see he has a bunch of different license plates in there. He takes one out and starts to change the plates out on the car. Huey wants to know what they're going to do. How are they going to get the guys back? Butcher tells them they're on their own. They have to get to Stillwell before the walls close in. Huey says, who gives a about Stillwell? We have to go back for them. Butcher tells him he doesn't get it. They have about a couple of hours before they're found, if they're lucky. They need to hit back and hit back now. Huey realizes Butcher is abandoning them. Huey says they risk themselves for him, and MM has a daughter. Butcher says they'd want them to finish the job. That's an interesting justification for him.
Yeah. Justification in this example to me means excuse. And I love how Butcher he's always got an excuse. Just yes or no questions, dude. I don't need the justification. Just yes or no.
Yeah, he's twisting it to meet his needs.
Yes. And it shows how much he twists, especially in this scene, and we'll see in a minute, how much he just is twisting on Huey so hard.
Yes. He really is dead set on this connection between him and Huey.
Yes.
The fact that they shared the loss to Butcher, I mean, that means more to him, I think
it does.
What he has going on with MM and Frenchie.
I think it really does. It's strange and weird, but I mean, I kind of understand that, having lost someone in a weird way. I mean, it's like people don't, my age don't lose your lives very easily. So it's something you kind of understand, certain bonds of people, I get.
There's also the additional component that he promised Huey, and maybe the fact that he promised is something that he doesn't want to go back on.
That could be. But is that just another excuse, though?
Hard to say.
To keep pushing, right? That's how I feel the same. I don't really know. I don't know if he's being sincere, or if he's trying to push Huey to come because I need you to help me, or I just need every man on deck. I got no idea. Butcher's so hard. He's as hard to read as Homelander in a way, which I guess that they're both the exact opposite of each other. So, but it makes sense that they're so like, even though they're so unlike.
I'll have to think about that.
Right.
We have a scene later. We'll get there.
Okay.
We'll talk about that later. Huey fires back at Butcher, saying, your job, not theirs. It's all about Homelander, isn't it? Butcher looks at him and says, and A-Train, this is your too, Huey. I promised you payback, didn't I? Exactly what I was just talking about.
Right.
Huey asks if Mallory gave Butcher the same speech back in the day. Butcher says she did, but she broke her promise, and he is keeping his promise to Huey. Huey says, I'm so stupid. You never cared about me or Robin, did you? I was just useful to you. Butcher tells him, Huey, of course you're useful. I mean, that's why you're here, isn't it? Now we just got to take one more step. Yeah? Come on. He turns to get back in the car. Huey says, no, we have to save them. Look at him standing up, my boy. Yeah, he's standing up for what he thinks is right. I like this loyalty to the rest of the crew. I really like that.
I do too. I mean, well, the whole thing, you've watched him grow every episode because Huey is our main guy for the most part. And I love that even though he reminds me, I had a friend like this that two of these guys that played in my band. One could fight, the other one couldn't. And these guys jumped him one time when they walked out of a bar, and this friend can't fight, knowing that he can't fight, still jumps in and is the first one out.
Oh, man.
But he still goes in.
Yeah.
And that's that same kind of thing. And I love it because of the fact that it's like he knows he's going to get his butt kicked, but it's like he's not going to let a friend take it alone, or a partner take it alone. And the fact that he's going to step up like that, I love it, dude.
Man, that's a great story, dude.
It is. I love that one. Those two guys are hilarious. Yep. It's one of my drummers and my current guitar player, buddy. That's my best. That's besides you. Y'all are like my best buds, man. You two, guitar player and you. Yep. y'all would get along great.
Cool. We'll have to meet someday.
Yeah.
Butcher aggressively says, "For sake, Huey, we don't have time for this. right now, okay? We get Stillwell. Now get in the car. Huey asks, then what? Becca comes back from the dead? Robin too? This is never going to stop. It's just going to be more blood and awfulness. Butcher walks up to him. They're nose to nose. And he says, that's the game. If you don't like to play, why did you join the team? Huey says, Mallory's right. You're just going to drag us all down with you. Not me. Not anymore. Butcher sneers and says, you're a pathetic and an insult to Robin's memory. That's harsh, man.
Ladies and gentlemen, the real Billy Butcher for your perusal. He is a real piece of crap.
Yeah, I did not like this at all.
At all. It just shows you how self-centered he is. It's all about, it's been about him this whole time.
Mm-hmm. Huey says, I think I'm doing this for her. Butcher just nods, then says goodbye. He then proceeds to peel out, spraying rocks and dirt in Huey's direction as he leaves. Earlier, you alluded to this scene.
Yes.
The Deep is having a mental breakdown.
Has anyone ever seen a fish be shaved? It's not quite that bad, but
Everybody Hurts is still playing. He is going through his grooming ritual at first, doing his shaving of his legs and his arms and his chest and wherever he can. And then after he is... I imagine it hurt to get shaving cream in those, so he's gonna have to be careful with that.
Yeah, and a razor cut on that would not be too easy either.
Yeah.
Like, wow.
After he's done, he's looking at himself in the mirror. Then he decides to shave his head, and he doesn't do the cleanest job of it. It's not a full shave. There's like chunks of hair randomly all over his head. And then when he's done, he's standing there staring in the mirror and he starts crying. Full-on mental breakdown.
Why am I starting to feel bad for him? It is, and I don't get it. I know, of course, it's just great writing and acting, but man, I really start to feel bad for him at this point.
You're empathetic. You're human. You're seeing another human suffer, even if he isn't. Yeah. You're seeing what he's going through. So that's the only thing I can think of.
I have an incident yesterday that happened at work. I can go into it or ignore it. About
it's
empathy.
Up to you. Yeah,
well, it's like there was a guy in the store I was following.
Mm-hmm.
This guy, I follow him into the restroom, not to be creepy, but just make sure he didn't have merchandise. And so I'm pretending to go to the restroom. And while I'm in there, he starts bawling. I mean, he starts crying. He breaks down, man. This is like a guy about 30 something, pretty beefy dude. And, this is a town that has a lot of retirees and recoveries in this town. We have a lot of drug recovery centers here, apparently. And so this young fellow just he's hitting rock bottom. And I talked to him. I gave the guy a hug, was real cool to him. And then I told him who I was and what I did and said, people see you in this store. I said, I don't want problems, but I need you to get help for yourself. So I was very empathetic. And it's part of the reason why I have a hard time doing my job sometimes and why I think I'm looking other ways, because I'm too empathetic with these guys. I mean, this guy has stolen from us a lot of expensive cologne testers. I couldn't prosecute him for the cologne testers, even though they're expensive. But it's just one of those things that when you see somebody hurt, it doesn't matter that this guy's stolen stuff from us. I mean, my first instinct is to comfort the guy and make him feel all right.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing you can do about it right now anyway, right?
That's right.
Yeah. So what was the outcome? Did he just end up appreciative that you...
He ended up just leaving. He was really cool. He's happy that I, just thank you kind of like for talking to me, because I got him calmed down and gave him a bottle of cold water, because I know he's going to have to be walking the streets for a little bit. So send him with a couple of waters, and he eventually exited the store, and we were good. So I was happy that he left, that he didn't steal anything, and he appreciated it's one of those moments sometimes, you never know when just being kind to somebody at certain moments in their life can alter an outcome on someone's whole life. This guy was struggling with sobriety, been sober about a month, maybe 2 months. And he's looking for any excuse. He's had track marks on his arm that are healing up, and he's looking for any excuse to use again, just to be kind to the guy and kind of cut him loose and send him on his way. The guy, maybe you kept that guy straight, maybe you didn't, but, just being kind to somebody can help them out more than you realize sometimes.
That reminds me of something I heard the other day. I cannot remember if it was in a fiction or it was a true story, but someone was planning on offing themselves, and I think they were going to jump off a bridge. And they said, if somebody smiles at me on the way to do this, I won't do it.
Oh, wow.
And I think one person smiled at him.
Oh, my word.
Of all the people they passed.
Goodness. That's powerful.
If you ever go out, I've kind of started smiling more I used to walk around with a scowl. I don't know. You remember me at Fry's? I used to
Oh my
scowl all
word, you did. Well, what's so funny is like I don't know my boss, which you knew him, but what we would do is we'd go to about once a month after I was made LP, and this is after you've been gone quite some time. Mike was my boss, and Mike and I would ride downtown together about once a month, once every other month to sign affidavits for a bunch of cases because we take about 30 cases every 2 months or so. And we'd go down there, and he was always so surprised because he's not like you where he would scowl a lot, but he's not very talkative either.
Mm-hmm.
And he was always like, I don't see, we'd get back in the car after we've left. He goes, I don't get it. I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, well, dude, you talked to the parking lot attendant. You greeted every cop you saw. You asked everyone how they were doing. The ladies that are in that office know you by name and you know them by name. And it's like, how do you do that? I was like, you don't know how to do that? I just assumed everyone did. So I kind of forget that it's something that I've just, I've always had no problem talking to anybody. You see me do in enough situations. So
yeah, I mentioned that before, is how friendly you are and always just so nice to everybody. That's why that one time that you were short, it really surprised me just because
right.
It was so off character for you.
Yeah.
Because you're always so nice.
Yeah.
But either way, it's something that I'm working on to be more like that. And
right. Well,
going out, when you're smiling, there's a lot of people that don't smile, but some people do smile back and it makes you feel good.
It does. And you see, the more you do it, the more you'll notice it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guarantee you that.
Starlight is sitting in a church listening to the choir sing. Huey comes up and sits behind her. Then he kind of clears his throat to get her attention. She turns around and then she just turns back front. I don't know if there was an eye roll there, but she didn't look pleased to see him.
Not at all.
He says he remembers her telling him she liked to come to this church to listen to the choir rehearse, so he figured he'd take a shot. She tells him he's got a lot of balls. He quips back, just two. He's pretty good.
It is very good. Very good comeback. Just two.
She tells him he must want her to arrest him. It's interesting language she's using here. Back to the point about this agreement about Vought with law enforcement. Is this a citizen's arrest, or you think she actually has some ability to arrest people?
I don't know. Because I don't know enough about a citizen's arrest. I mean, it's what's funny because in a weird way, I guess that's what I was doing. That I do in a weird way as LP. But I have, but we had rules that we followed. There were certain things that you had to do to be able to make these stops. And I'm assuming that she would have to follow certain rules too. I don't think she could just lay her hands on anyone, even if it's a wanted criminal. I don't know. How do you think this stuff would even hold up at court?
They have to have some special situation going on.
So many cops don't show up, and a lot of times that can overturn a case on smaller, like your minor stuff like traffic tickets and things like that. But that you don't think any of these guys would ever show up to court, do they? Do
no.
you?
No, Vought lawyers would be there.
Right. That's what I'm thinking too. So
they have to have some type of agreement with them.
It's got to be some grudging nod between the government and the local government and the seven, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Huey says, "Actually, Annie, I need your help." She shakes her head, then she gets up and leaves. Outside, she's walking away from him. He's begging her to just listen to him. She asks, why? More awful secrets you want to tell me? More drugs that I was dosed with as a kid, maybe? He apologizes for telling her, saying he thought maybe she wanted to know the truth. She says, oh, okay, so you're all about the truth. He tells her Vought is giving Compound V to some bad people, like really bad, like that soup terrorist. This causes her to stop walking away from him and turn around. She says that's insane. He tells her, no, it's true. Look, my friends wanted to stop it, but they got caught on Vought's orders, and I figured because you had security clearance, maybe you could help find them. She tells him she was almost arrested just for knowing him, and she had to convince them she was an idiot that he threw out and used, and now he wants her to help his psycho killer friends. He kind of laughs and says, when you put it like that, she tells him he has 30 seconds to get the hell out of there. He deflates a bit and says, okay, I'm sorry to bother you. He turns to leave. After he's about 10-15 paces away, she yells after him, I mean, why the hell would I ever help you? He turns and says, because Vought's up to some evil because it's your job, because you're a superhero.
That's exactly right.
I really like Huey's pep talk that he gives her here. It's from the heart. I think it It touches her a little
It
bit.
does. I would think it really does.
I don't think she's ready to receive it yet necessarily.
Right.
She's still mad at him. She says, really? I can't remember the last time I saved anyone. He says she saved him. She asks when. He comes back with bowling alley. She doesn't understand. He tells her, I was angry after Robin. I was headed for this cliff. And then you and me went bowling. She's kind of just trying to understand what he's getting at. He says, yeah, bowling. That's it. She says, that's not saving him. That's just being there. She pauses for a moment, then shakes her head. She tells him the thing is, she doesn't care. She turns and walks away.
You know, sometimes being there for people can be one of the most important things that you can do for them.
Yeah.
You know, like we're talking about being this being kind of like talking to people, being nice to them. That's kind of what that is, and sometimes that's very important. And but speaking of being there, have you seen this the movie Being There by the same name with Peter Sellers in it?
I have not.
It's the last movie he was in. You know who Peter Sellers was, right?
Yeah, the Pink Panther movies. He was in.
Yes, the Clouseau. Yeah.
What was the one with the nuclear bombs?
Oh, Dr. Strangelove. That's
Dr.
one of my all-time favorites.
Yeah.
So but he died right unexpectedly at the end of this movie. But he plays like this idiot man-child kind of character. He's a professional gardener that works for a wealthy woman. She dies, and he's put on the street. And through some weird occurrences and some goings on and comings and goings, he kind of ends up getting like the ears of the presidents, some of the most powerful men in the world, and really funny, really dry. Just kind of one of these great commentaries on politics and people reading into things what they want to read, because all he does is talk about gardening, and he really is talking about gardening, and they always think he's talking about the economy or politics, and it's just really good, really good.
Okay, I'll have to check it out.
Real good.
A-Train is really struggling. We can hear his heart beating loudly. The cast is off his leg, and now he has a brace on it. He's pulling a train, and it's really an impressive sight.
Yeah, and I find that really interesting because, as I mentioned here, the Flash is real powerful. But I mean, you see A-Train pulling this, that's from his legs and his, of course, his back too. But I mean, it's from strength and not from like super speed,
right?
Because I've never seen the Flash pull a train, so I'm kind of impressed with that.
I'm gonna be honest with you, I'm not very familiar with the Flash. I just know he goes fast and that he
does.
has some flash power that he draws from, or whatever it's called.
There was two different kinds of things. There's running and super speed. Running can equal super speed, but it doesn't equal reactions. The Flash can insert his super speed power in a dexterity motion, so he can dodge into a straight out speed. So he can just run fast, but he can use it in multiple ways at multiple times. I mean, he can use it in all different ways at any given time. It's his body can be crippled, and he can still be functioning in super speed mentally.
Okay.
So he can slow down time for himself at least, and maybe see and take a look at things and really examine something if he wanted to. And if he's in what would take us a second to do, it would be like an eternity of time in that 1 second. He could spend that much time looking at something.
Are there any negative implications of him doing something like that?
Not at all. Not that I'm aware of. The only negative implications I given, now granted, I haven't read Flash in 20 years, but he was always one of my favorites. But I understand there's the Flash point where he created an alternate universe and created a bunch of paradoxes. So he is incredibly powerful. He is up there with like Superman and Green Lantern. He's like the big three in that universe. Yeah.
Interesting. Nathan pulls up and asks what the hell he's doing. The doctor said 6 weeks minimum after a fracture like that. A-Train says he's all good. Look, he's back to training. He feels great. Nathan doesn't believe him. He skeptically asks, "You're healed?" A-Train says he is. Nathan asks, "How the are you healed?" A-Train laughs uncomfortably. Nathan immediately sees what's going on. He says, "You're back on that compound V. You promised me that you would stay clean." A-Train groans and he explains, "No, I'm clean. A1, all natural. A-Train, baby." Nathan isn't buying it, saying, "Your bones fuse back together overnight? That sound natural to you?"
Now, I assumed he could probably heal faster than most folks, but I would assume also that it's not good to be pulling, I don't know how many thousands of pounds that is, how many tons he's pulling. But he's got to be pulling 100 tons.
Yeah, quite heavy.
If not, that's probably easily. You would still have some pain when you think we'll cover this in our book review of the Malazan stuff, but I don't know if we want to cut what I just said out. But the forcing healing. I mean, that even though that healing is done, it's not always great.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious especially because he's training it and he's still got the brace on it.
Right, he's got that metal brace on there. Yeah.
But you can tell he also looks kind of. It's when he's talking about, oh, I'm all natural. It's like, no, there's something wrong.
He has a certain desperation to him.
Yes.
He's very. I mean, he is working out. He's sweaty, but there's just this like feverish edge to him. It's hard to describe for me. Like he's almost manic.
Yes.
A-Train claims maybe he's just as strong. He says he is the world's fastest man. Maybe he's also very strong along with that.
Yeah.
Nathan thinks for a moment and tells him, I bet you can't outrun this. He goes walking back to his car. A-Train wants to know where he's going. Nathan tells him he's not going to sit by and watch him kill himself. A-Train tells him he doesn't need this. He claims Nathan has always been jealous of him, so he can just leave. He calls him a slow loser. It is amazing to me, the mental gymnastics that he's going through right now. This is his older brother who only cares about his well-being. He's not jealous of him at all. And to him at this point in time, he's saying he's jealous. And I mean, it's got to be the addiction, right? And then the potential loss of being on the 7.
Yes. And it's all, like I said, that's that kind of, you always see it in the movies with the junkies. They have that, well, fine, get on out of my life kind of deal. I don't need you. It's the same exact bull.
Yeah. And now he's resorting to taking the PEDs, just to try and get back
right
as quick as he can. Nathan speeds off in his car, and A-Train goes back to training. We are taken to the Vought Tower, where there's a fancy gathering going on. There are drinks being passed around by servers, and someone's playing the piano. Madeline is surrounded by various high-ranking members of the military. They're all smiling and laughing. Black Noir comes up to the piano player and sits on the bench next to him. The musician looks a little uncomfortable, but the consummate professional that he is, he doesn't miss a beat. Keeps playing.
Nope.
Black Noir is just sitting there. His back is straight as an arrow. Hands are in his lap. Then he slowly turns his head and looks at the musician. Doesn't make a peep. Barely, it's a slow motion. The musician looks at him. That stops him playing. And then he just gets up and goes. He excuses himself.
Awesome. That's amazing.
Black Noir slides into his place and then just starts playing the piano quite adeptly.
I assume that anything this guy does is adeptly. I'm assuming I don't know why we always go back to the Batman, but Black Noir is obviously so agile. He's wearing super thick leather gloves, like tactical kind of gloves. And yet he starts playing the piano with these gloves, and he's playing beautifully. This guy's playing like Van Cliburn. Do you know who Van Cliburn was?
No. I recognize the song, but I don't know who Van Cliburn is.
What was the song? Because I love that song.
Well, I mean, I've heard it before. I don't remember the name of it.
I'll look it up because it's one of those. It's one of the greatest hits of all the classical stuff. But Van Cliburn
it Chopin? Maybe
it probably. You know what? He did a lot of piano music, so it could very well have been Chopin.
Yeah.
But Van Cliburn was a Dallas guy in the 50s. He was like an internationally known pianist, and his estate was down the road from the Fry's Electronics we worked at. Man, it's about 2 to 3 miles from us, right across from the White Rock Lake.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, big estate. You could still drive by it today, and he's been dead for a while, but there's still the Van Cliburn estate is there, right across from White Rock. So you I think you know right where I'm talking about.
Yeah, man, we lived around there.
Yeah, so it's but yeah, he was something else. I mean, he was really good, and especially for being a Dallas boy. So.
I missed that lake.
Oh, I do too. It was a good lake. Good lake to go. They had good trails around that stuff.
They did.
Good parks around that one.
Homelander enters the party, and someone shouts out, "There he is!" All the attendees start clapping and cheering for him,
including Black Noir. Do you see him on the piano stop and clap?
I did not see that.
Noir's up there, but he's got that beautiful, perfect posture.
Yes,
hands together. It's beautiful. Everything he does is beautiful. He stops and claps too.
Wow, thanks for pointing that. Do you think he's like kind of kissing Homelander a little bit?
Again, I know something about the comic book. I know what Black Noir and who he is, so I can answer, but I don't want to spoil that for you.
Okay.
Because I don't know if they would go that way on the show. We'll talk off air real quick about season 3, what I've seen from the trailers of it. I'm curious about.
Okay. We'll get there.
Cool.
If it's not covered by the end of season 3, I'm going to authorize you to tell me about it.
Okay. Cool. That's only like 16 more weeks.
Yeah, we'll be all right. Yeah. Homelander, with his charm switch on, humbly asks them to stop. He takes the applause in and salutes the crowd. He shares a look with Madeline. Finally enter Mr. Edgar, the CEO of Vought Industries.
Mr. Edgar, of course, is again Giancarlo Esposito, one of our favorite guys. He was Gus Fring in Breaking Bad.
Thank you. I was contemplating whether we should mention that. Thank you for that. Appreciate it.
I like it because I just love him so much. I'll have to give a shout out to Giancarlo. I don't get to say Giancarlo very often either. So
that's an interesting name. I like it.
Very interesting name.
He approaches Madeline, greeting her by name. She's surprised he's there. She didn't know he was going to attend the party. He has to borrow her from her companions for a moment. Homelander's watching all this take place. Mr. Edgar slides a folded napkin over to Madeline. They're standing by the bar. She opens it and reads what's written on it. She sighs with satisfaction. He tells her the Pentagon is shelling out close to $40 billion a year. And he tells her, you should enjoy a bonus that reflects that.
How much do you think that is? I'm assuming it's a percentage.
I would say it's got to be 7 figures.
Oh, absolutely. That's kind of what I was thinking too. I think it's one of those kind of bonuses she could probably, because he said, I don't want you to retire. So it's obviously a big enough bonus to retire on.
Yeah. I would say probably 7 figures. I don't think it would reach 8.
Yeah.
She tells him she doesn't know what to say. He tells her, well, say thank you. She thanks him, laughing a little bit. He tells her not to get too excited. It comes with strings, as they always do. She's going to need to move her office down to floor 82.
Now, I think they mean down from the penthouse they're in. Because in Madeline's office, she says up to 32,
oh, okay.
82.
Interesting.
So,
okay.
So I think it's because they're on the penthouse, because that's twice we've seen that penthouse at these two, like at the flashback party.
The Christmas party, yep.
The Christmas party. And so that's obviously a penthouse. It's such a nice, I mean, that's like Olympus there, you know. And with the 7, it's definitely like Olympus.
Good analogy.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for clarifying that, because I thought, I was like, wow, are the soups higher up than the ELT? That was weird to me.
Right. I'm assuming the penthouse is just I'm assuming that is held specifically for that kind of stuff. I mean, they got a place where they can wine and dine all the diplomats from all over the world up there.
Yeah, that makes sense. Or maybe their shareholder meetings, their highest level people might go up there.
Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the people behind the people the people.
Yeah, like the board meeting.
Right.
Mm-hmm. After he tells her to move, she's going to have to move her office down to 82. She says, that's your floor. He continues, and I'm going to want you to start writing shotgun on my meetings. Hey, don't go planning my retirement yet. I'm just saying someone needs to run this show when I move to Belize. Enjoy yourself, Madeline. Start thinking about the view from 82. You think he wanted that to rhyme?
I was going to say, nice rhyme. I didn't realize that until he probably so.
Yeah.
Dude, look who it is. It's Mr. Edgar. This guy does not have anything not prepared. I'm sure it's nicely prepared.
Yep. She thanks him again and he leaves. She processes this for a moment, then slams her hands down on the bar in excitement. That's a big development for her. What an opportunity that's got to be. And she's got to be feeling great about that.
You know, she sells that so good too. I love that look. I mean, I'm assuming that this has been like her end goal all along.
Yeah.
And if this is, well, she's hitting it at a good age. Looks like she's got time to enjoy, some time to enjoy that life with that big money. And
right.
She looks like she's the person that makes that kind of plan and gets it on gets it on like you do, Mr. I want to do my own podcast.
You gotta have dreams, man.
Hey, I love your dream, buddy. It's great.
It's our dream.
I'm enjoying it. It's become our dream. I love it. It's very infectious.
It's a great time.
I love it.
Starlight is speaking with an officer. She's explaining how her powers work. And we didn't have clarity on this earlier in the season. This kind of helps
Yes.
explain how this works. I thought
Yes, it
this was
did.
pretty cool. I would like to point out before I get into how her powers work, she's also in her feminist costume, and she seems to have had some alcohol. She's a little sloppy. Yes. She takes electricity in and blasts come out. And she has a cell phone on the table. She's making her hand glow, and the screen's flickering on the cell phone.
Yeah.
So we were talking about her and Drummer Boy because they used to date, and he has electric powers. I bet they could do a cool team up where he feeds her power and she uses it.
Oh yeah, dude. I mean, that would be like, she would probably be unstoppable with that combination kind of support.
Right.
But I'm not, I guess unless there's natural electricity happening around you, that could be a drawback. But, heroes don't tend to function out in the country a lot of times. So if it's in the city, she's fine. And even if she's not in the city, her other attributes, she is strong, and she obviously knows martial arts. So that combination, she's still an effect. I'm assuming she's still an effective fighter because she does have some enhanced strength. We know she's obviously really strong. So
she is, and she took 2 bullets to the chest and survived. Yeah,
good. Yeah, she's good to go.
Yeah. The point about the electricity, you're absolutely right. If she is anywhere where there's not some type of infrastructure, she's not going to be at full capacity.
Yes. She'll have to rely on her secondary attributes.
Unless Drummer Boy's there.
Or power battery backup pack. She carry an uninterrupted power supply.
Yep.
She need a heck of a big one.
She needs like a Tesla coil or something.
Yeah, she does.
The officer tells her, that's a hell of a party trick. Do you ever use it for fun? He kind of grabs her hand in a suggestive manner. She asks him if she can tell him a secret. He nods. She continues, sometimes my eyes light up when they both chuckle a little bit. He begins to move in for a kiss, but she kind of realizes what's going on and backtracks, asking if he will excuse her. He tries to protest, but she gets up, telling him it'll be just a second. And she's kind of walking off pretty quickly. Maeve sees her walking away, looking a little concerned. Next, we see Starlight's thrown up in the restroom. I guess she had quite a bit more to drink than I initially imagined.
Yeah, for her to be acting like that, I think or this is her first time consuming.
Interesting point. Maeve comes in. She walks up and asks if Starlight wants her to hold her hair back. Starlight groans and tells her, don't touch. She stands up and tells Maeve to leave her alone. She's not in the mood. Maeve asks her, not in the mood for what? Starlight responds with, your bottomless, casual cruelty. So just make whatever shitty comment you're going to make and then go. Maeve really actually looks hurt here.
Yeah, she does.
She tells her, look. She's looking at her right arm. Starlight wants to know what she's looking at. Maeve tells her, my radius never healed straight. I really did break every bone in my right arm. Starlight still doesn't get it. Maeve continues, stopping the bus from falling. You said the marketing guys made it up. It was me, 23-year-old, bright-eyed, you could bounce a quarter off of me. I really did want to make a difference. I really did care. I was just like you. And then I started giving pieces of myself away. And I guess I gave away everything. There's a moment where she pauses and they just look at each other. She continues. So you know what? Just be original. For sake. My position is already taken. Be the annoying goody two-shoes asshole that you are. One of us has to be. She walks out. Starlight looks at herself in the mirror. And I got to give it to Maeve here. What a speech. The vulnerability she shows, the self-reflection, and then the recognition of what she has become compared to what she was. I mean, I really like it.
So this is how the Spice Girls speech was supposed to work.
In terms of...
Well, the Spice Girls speech did achieve its intended purpose, but it's like it should have been more motivational. But like,
it was motivational and did not confuse the people that were supposed to receive it at the same time.
But I think the confusion helped them bond together somehow.
Yes, because they're like, why is this guy doing this? Yeah.
Spice Girls.
I want to point out, this is exactly what you and I were talking about this giving away pieces of yourself.
Yes.
We mentioned this exact thing when they were showing Starlight her costume. We
Yes.
said, this is how they get you. You keep making compromises and you keep doing it little by little. And then over time, they just erode away.
Yeah. The other interesting thing, and I agree with you on all those points. The other interesting thing I have found is how much that you start as we are doing this season finale here, is that the similarities of our characters to their nemesis, like Homelander to Butcher, Mallory to Butcher, and also from Huey's viewpoint of being Huey to Butcher. You get these weird parallels that you see kind of coming full circle as we come around to the end of the season.
Okay, so I see the Homelander and Butcher one, the Mallory and Butcher one as well.
Yes.
So are you making an analogy between Starlight and Maeve here?
Well, you could say that there could be one made for them too, as well. But I'm just talking. Well, I'm just talking about it. Well, that one as well. But there's just some small, minor things that you start to see them as a whole as we look at this so close and in excruciating detail. I tend to focus on these things too. But it's like you just kind of notice these, like, and I would say between Starlight and her as well. Even though I didn't mention this, there's probably more that I'm missing. I'm sure there's tons that I'm missing. It has to be super obvious for me to spot the ones that I spot.
Well, I think you picked up on a number of things that were deep in there.
Well, I guess that's just, I guess that's part of, because we each have our own perspective too. We ask differently.
Yeah. One thing that I find interesting is kind of the opposite arcs of Maeve and Homelander, where Maeve is almost on this redemption arc.
Yes.
Inspired by Starlight, and Homelander, he starts off so shiny, like you said.
Yeah.
And then he's just on this plummet downwards.
Yeah.
As we find out more about him. He was bad from the beginning.
Well, we'll bring that up here. Yes. But we'll bring this up later on in this conversation, as a matter of fact.
Okay.
Here in about 5 minutes or so.
Okay.
Probably quicker.
One final point on Maeve's speech from my side. I love that she's actually motivating Starlight to do good, to be good, to not make the same mistakes that she did.
Yes.
I really like that she's coming back around.
Yeah. And I like how she was not unwilling to put herself as the example of don't be me. We've already got one of me. We need you to be good. And I really appreciate that.
Madeline is kind of out away from the party. She's looking out the window kind of pensively. She's got to be on cloud 9 right now after that talk with Mr. Edgar, because this is a huge company for her to be potentially running in the future.
Yeah, she's still feeling it, dude. I mean, she's still that. I mean, that's a big high right there. I mean, that's a lifelong goal.
Yeah, you don't come down from that for a while. Yeah.
No,
you don't come down from that for a while. Yeah. Homelander approaches, but there's still about 20 feet between them when he stops. He tells her she's been avoiding him. She denies that. He doesn't believe her. He approaches her saying, "It seems that way. You do know that I've gone to see Vogelbaum, though, right?" That's the doctor that I didn't want to keep saying his name.
Right.
And you know what he told me? She says she never meant for him to find out that way. He says, "Let me guess, you wanted to protect me." She says they all did. He nods, saying, "Of course. You think I'm fragile?" She says she doesn't. He, in a very sinister manner, says, "You tried doing any of this. I mean, any of this without me?" She puts her hand on his arm and tells him she couldn't. He's referring to the military stuff. It doesn't happen without him. He pulls his arm away from her and says, "Madeline, did it ever occur to you that a soup terrorist showing up exactly when we needed him to was a pretty incredible coincidence? It's almost like someone planned it." She kind of gets a look on her face, and it's not good. He says, "Me." He pauses, then again says, "Me. I made him." She asks what he means when he says he made him. He tells her, "Well, I borrowed some Compound V, had A-Train run it all over the globe, and I supercharged some jihadis. he has a very pleased smile on his face, very smug. Look at how smart I am, mommy. Look what I did.
You know, the fact that this whole operation is set up is actually pretty impressive. He has just revealed himself to be Darth Sidious. He is all of a sudden the main villain. I am the main guy.
Yeah.
It's like, wait, really? I mean, I knew that you were kind of a dirt ball, but I didn't see you as that level. You
Right.
know, he was not that kind of player. He's just, a petty, petulant little boy with massive power. And you realize that there's actually some brains in there. That's pretty scary.
Mm-hmm. So you don't think it was short-sighted to give the Compound V to all these bad guys?
Oh, I'm sure that it is.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think that Homelander is a lot smarter than we've given him credit for, too.
Mm-hmm. This brings about an interesting question. Is Vought really that bad? Because a lot of the stuff that's really, really bad here isn't the typical corporate nonsense. It all seems to be like injecting random people with Compound V, right? Now, to be fair, they are injecting babies with Compound V, right?
True. But but I'm like you, do you wonder if this is, I'm assuming this is because they've made this Compound V, that they're probably some pharmaceutical industry. So they've probably done some good.
They are primarily a pharmaceutical company.
Okay, that's kind of what I was thinking. So if that's the case, and
we learned that in season 2, I believe.
Okay, so if that's the case, I'm assuming that they have made some medicines that have probably benefited us at some point in the past.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. Is Vought truly that bad, or was all of it this Homelander is literally the supervillain of the whole thing?
Well, I think that there's the thing with a show like this is that it's obviously long planned because we're on season 3.
Mm-hmm.
Season 4 has already been announced also.
Okay.
So it's one of these things
that's exciting.
It's exciting. So the fact that they have no plans of getting rid of this show anytime soon, they unlike Netflix, who will cancel something after 3 seasons, they've had that show Bosch on Amazon for 9 seasons, and then they made a spinoff series. So they seem to be, when you see them committing to season 4, I'm kind of like, wow, okay, you guys are really, y'all. This is apparently a large property for them and doing really good, which is exciting. That excites me though, because I mean it's a great show. I mean it doesn't do anything but get better,
right?
At least from what I've seen.
Homelander continues. Not to oversimplify it, I mean it was actually very difficult and very messy using adult subjects. There's a good reason that Vought doesn't do it, but well enough survived to call the operation a huge success. Huge. And now we have villains all over the globe that only we can fight in sequel after sequel after sequel.
How many people did he give this to? He says a huge success.
It's hard to say.
I know. That's a scary comment.
Mm-hmm.
All over the world.
But they had to be targeted on criminal enterprises. What population do you have?
I think that you would probably, where would you go? Well, yeah, almost any population. I mean, but I think you would go to the places that would be, what you would obviously want to go to when you want to go to North Korea.
Well,
give them guys warnings, or what? Or am I taking the question wrong?
Well, okay. So the goal is to have a credible threat that would make the military jump at the opportunity to have Vought as a subcontractor, or a contractor for soups, right? Given that likely it's not a nation state, it would have to be some rebel army, or in this case, some jihadi group, or
like he used that group like we saw at the beginning. Those were obviously drug manufacturers, but that could, in a nation like that, the government may have their hand in that for money. They may be getting kickbacks on something like illegal like that. But I know that a lot of these groups also have small independent armies that are sometimes resisting from within or whatever. So I'm like you. You definitely wouldn't put this in the government's hands. You would want to stick it. I think I'm like you. I think you'd probably find the criminal element, get those guys souped up on it.
Yeah. It'd be cool if we see some like Russian heroes at some point.
Ooh, I would love that.
Yeah, that'd be pretty
I've
sick.
always been fascinated with Russia. It's because of
Yeah.
the growing up in the Cold War era. Again, as a child, I was always taught to, feel bad for the Russian people, but hate their government. So we always had a lot of sympathy for the peoples. And so I was always fascinated by them.
Yeah. There's like this sadness to their culture. It's weird.
Dude,
I guess it's
yes.
because the cold weather and just the history over there. It's a very deep culture.
There's that. There's, they have it's a very deep culture. And one of my favorite science fiction writers is not Russian. He's actually Polish, but he was trapped behind the Iron Curtain. And it's Stanislaw Lem. He's the guy that wrote Solaris.
Okay.
And in '72, the Russian film director Andrei Tarkovsky made the first Solaris, which is actually the far superior version of Solaris. It's actually on HBO Max. If you get a chance to watch it, and it's one of those movies that there's a lot of sadness, but there's something about Lem's writing and also the fact of this, the way this director directs it. I mean, he carries that forward. It's really brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
Mm-hmm. Is that your cat at the litter box?
That's my cat. I'm sorry. I was hoping you couldn't hear that. She
okay.
doesn't. She's not covering the litter. She's got long hair on her paws like yours do.
Mm-hmm.
So she scratches the wall.
Oh, my cat does that. My long-haired cat does that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I get it because I wouldn't want to get it on my hands either, on my hair.
Is that why they do that?
That's why they're doing it, because they got that longer. I don't think they want to get the mess on their hands. So she's rubbing. She's doing the motions. I'm covering here, but I don't want to touch it at the same time.
Wow, that's crazy. Okay, I never put that together. Okay,
I'm pretty sure that's what it is. That's why I try and cut hers on her paws, but it's hard because she don't like you touching her with scissors.
Mm-hmm, I bet.
But she loves it when her hair is cut. She loves being shaved.
Okay, interesting.
Make of that what you will.
Yeah. Homelander has kind of been walking around for this whole conversation while he's been talking. He's now standing behind her, and she hasn't turned around to face him as he finishes his little speech telling her about his master plan. He prompts her for a response asking, well, say something. She still hasn't turned around. She takes a deep breath and turns around, and there's a look of desire on her face. She walks up to him and kisses him. This is not the response that I was expecting from her. Is she thanking him for making this whole thing possible?
See, I don't see the look of desire. She looked worried to me for some reason. I feel like she's worried. I mean, I know she took the time to gather herself, and I know she's trying to put that look on. But I think it's like, oh, you're trying to make it look like you want that, but that's not what you want. I think you're scared because I think she's coming to realization that he's been doing this, and she didn't realize that she's not been controlling this. That's a pretty big realization and a pretty big revelation. This guy that she thought she had on a leash has been running this whole soup terrorist thing underneath the radar the whole time.
Yeah, that's a good point.
He's not very known for being under the radar.
Yeah, the look on her face did not convey, like prior to her turning around, did not convey genuine desire to me. And the fact that she just kind of was stunned in place for this whole speech that he gives.
Yeah.
Finally, she turns around and acts like this. It was kind of jarring, the juxtaposition. They go to her office where she rewards him after all that they've been dancing around this all season, right?
Yes.
I'm not going to go too far into it because it's creepy, but the whole time this is going on, she's calling him her boy, her sweet boy. She's telling him she's proud of him.
There is a very uncomfortable sex scene between these people, and then
okay, we'll leave it at that. Yeah,
leave it at that.
Yeah, she tries to get him not to get too aggressive because she doesn't want to get hurt.
Yes,
we're taken to where Frenchie and MM are being held. Frenchie, the optimist that he is telling MM that in medieval times, they locked prisoners inside of a pillory barrel. Then they'd kneel in their own excrement till they got sepsis and died. So he doesn't really finish the statement.
I love his. Now he at least butchers are more motivating speeches than Frenchie's. It's at least he's not talking about, well, my dad's trying to smother me with the Hello Kitty today, or by the way, I had to back that up and read what he was saying because I couldn't understand him at first. And I was like horrified when I read that statement. I was like, oh my, it's awful. I've heard of that before, but it's like, oh. It's so disgusting.
I was looking up the pillory concept because I hadn't heard of a pillory barrel specifically.
Right.
I found the pillory thing, which is like the stalks.
Yes. Yes. Those are ones I'm familiar with.
There was a picture of a barrel for drunkards where you're literally wearing a barrel. And I don't think this is what he was referring to, but I thought it was interesting because your arms are coming out of it and your head's coming out the top, and your legs coming out the bottom, but you can't reach your mouth to drink anything.
It's very intriguing. Yes, I
Yeah.
guess that's very intriguing. All right.
To the point about Frenchie perking people up. This is such an optimist perspective that he has, right? He's saying, well, it could be worse.
It could
It
be
could be
worse.
this, right?
It could always be worse.
Yeah. MM's response is, as good as they all are, he says, thank you for the disgusting yet fascinating piece of trivia.
Oh,
Frenchie tells him he's just saying it could be worse.
oh,
MM says,
goodness.
right? He looks away. Frenchie looks at him for a moment, then asks why MM didn't tell them he had a daughter. He shrugs and he says he doesn't know. Thinks about it for a minute, then he tries to add a little bit more context. He says, I guess she's the only good thing I ever did. I just wanted to just leave her clean out of it, you know? But I that up to high heaven. Probably never see her again. Frenchie says he understands. She made MM a better person. MM looks at Frenchie and tells him Kamiko's going to be okay. And Frenchie says, so you do know her name.
I love that despite the differences between these guys, they've got each other's backs.
Yeah, they aggravate each other, but there is a friendship there, I think.
I think the combat bonds, all that, that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I think it formed with these guys.
Back to Homelander and Madeline. He has his head in her lap and she's petting him. She asks if he likes it. He sarcastically says no, and he's smiling, and he actually looks pretty satisfied.
Mm-hmm.
She tells him that Mr. Edgar came to the party tonight and practically offered her his job. Not right away, but he wants her to move to the 82nd floor so she can be closer to him. Homelander gets a concerned look on his face. He says, really? But you'll still be my day-to-day, right? She assures him she will be. She states, I will be there for you always. He says, good. He looks at her and tells her, Madeline, from now on, no more secrets. Promise me. She looks him in the eye and promises him. She apologizes for not telling him about his baby.
She should have left it at that.
She should have left it at that. She says, it's just that you carry so much, and the pain of losing a child to miscarriage is, I just wanted to spare you that burden. Do you understand? As soon as she says the word miscarriage, his eyes change.
Music does the winding down at that same point.
Mm-hmm. This was a critical error on her part. She messed up big time. This is why honesty is the best policy, because the truth will out. If you're either lying in conjunction with other people, there's more chance of you guys not coordinating your lie, or you're going to forget what the lie was, get tied up in it, and it just turns into its own beast. Just tell the truth.
Mm-hmm. Tell the truth.
She asked him if he understood. He says yes. Huey walks up to the motel on foot. He stops to press his retainer into the top of his mouth, then continues walking through the parking lot. As soon as he passes the van with flowers written on the side, an assailant rushes him from the side, aggressively tackling him, knocking him to the ground. He does an excellent job of acting like he's surprised. He's yelling, "What the?" They bring Huey to the holding cell and throw him in with Frenchie and MM. This scene right here is...
This is another... Now, this is one of my favorite scenes of this episode. Not of this, but because like I said, I think we both agree that the introduction scene is one of our favorites of the series, of the season one.
Mm-hmm.
But out of this episode, this stuff in jail is, with these three, is some of the funniest stuff I've seen.
Yeah. I mean... I
love it.
I was laughing so hard. My wife asked me, "What's wrong? Are you okay?" It's just all right. Let's get into it.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it.
They bring Huey to this holding cell. He's got a bag on his head, and they throw him down in the cell. And he falls forward. This causes the MM to yell at them to take it easy on Huey, asking them, "What is wrong with you?" They slam the door, and then MM says to the captor. They're like,
I cannot state again how much I want this guy on my team.
Yeah, I mean it's awesome how much
He's
they've
great.
adopted Huey as one of
Oh,
their own.
he is.
Yep.
He's just one of the team.
Yeah, he is. Frenchie is attending to Huey, asking if he's okay, if he broke any bones. Huey tells them no. asks if they got Butcher too. Huey says no. They ask if Huey and Butcher got separated. Huey says, well, he went after Homelander, but I came to save you. Yay. Says, so you came here. You meant to come here without Butcher? Huey says, yeah. Frenchie says incredible in French.
And let me just say, this is the point that I find so amazing right here when Frenchie does this.
Yeah. He comes up, he puts both his hands on Huey's face, and he kisses him once on each cheek. He says, never has a man thrown his life away so completely like you've thrown away yours today. No, what I mean is you rescuing us is the most useless, futile gesture I can think of. Unbelievable. I mean, it's so good.
But Frenchie loves it though. At the same time, he's so touched.
He
I
is.
think he's like, it's like, this is so futile, but I'm so touched by this. I love it, man.
I've never seen a more worthless sacrifice. And it's tragic that Huey thought he was doing the right thing, and he still is doing the right thing.
He is.
But Frenchie and MM are acting the same way Butcher said they would.
They are. They're like, it's great though. But for them, it's not mean though.
Right. They're not being mean about it. Yeah.
No, unlike Butcher, who would find some way to twist the knife. It's like they kind of laugh about it because they at least see it for what it is. I feel like it's like, hey, at least he feels like he's in here with us, and he's trying to help us out. So it's like I think they come like, dude, I may have misread this guy. It's like I love him, but it's like, I really like him.
Yeah. Huey says, yeah, I got it. You're trying to calm Frenchie down a little bit. MM says, all right, so what's the plan? And Huey says, all right, so they searched me very, very thoroughly. But I managed to polygrip my 12th grade retainer so it looks like a permanent bridge, and it totally worked. He shows both Frenchie and MM the retainer, and he's got his mouth open, and they're both kind of ducking down, squinting, looking in the top of his mouth. It's funny. He says, Frenchie, you can pick a lock with anything, right? There's premium metal wire in this thing. Frenchie and MM are excited. Frenchie is telling him to take it out. Huey says, okay, 1 second. He attempts to remove it. It won't come out. He tries a couple times. It won't come out. MM tells him, come on, man, spit that out.
I love Mothermilk. Oh, my word. I just can't stop crying when he says that.
Oh, just wait. Frenchie says, okay, stand still. He takes one hand and he grabs Huey's jaw, and then he takes his other hand and he starts like sticking his fingers in his mouth, he's fumbling around, and the noises are hilarious, right?
Oh, dude, he's got his hand, because Huey's a big guy. He's like 6'2" or something like that. I think the actor is.
He's 6'1". Both him and Carl Urban are 6'1". I looked it up today.
Okay,
yeah.
So Frenchie's tiny, and he's got like his whole hand in that kid's mouth. His hand is in that guy's mouth trying to get that thing out of there. That's brutal.
He's really brutal. Digging around, won't come out. Huey starts freaking out. You're like, what the man? MM shushes them, tells Huey to relax. This is it right here. All right.
This is it, dude.
He gets right in his face, telling Huey to focus. He says, all right, I'm going to knock that out of your mouth. He's shaking his head saying, we're not at that step yet.
We're not at that step yet.
We don't have to do that. MM assures him, it's just going to sting a little bit. It's just going to
sting a little bit.
It's like the mesmer. Just go walk it off. The guy's arms flopping. Just go walk it off. Huey says, sting. MM starts a countdown, telling Huey on 3. He says the word 3 and punches him in the face hard. He doesn't even count down.
Does he say that? I didn't even hear him say 3.
He did. He does.
I thought Huey was still running his mouth, like wait, like kind of trying to clarify what is the countdown, and then it just pops him in the face.
It happened so fast. I can't be positive. I thought he did. It could be either.
So, he could have just said 3, but I'll check that out. That's kind of funny though. Either way, You're like me. I think you're probably waiting for mother's milk to just pop him on one.
Yes.
You don't want to. You don't want to have to wait for three. That's bad. It's like one. Oh, it's just going to be bad. It's like you don't want to think about that.
Yeah, he would be cringing out of the way. Yeah, this is one of those ones. Yeah. Huey is knocked flat to the ground and he's groaning. Is immediately asking if he's okay. Huey spits out the retainer. Frenchie and both exclaim, yes. Is telling Huey, good job. Next we see a guard has been knocked out by Frenchie and he's taking his weapon, but a camera catches their escape. Yep. I got to tell you, man, I was laughing so hard throughout this scene.
That is one I backed up and watched about 2 or 3 times because I couldn't stop laughing with him. When it's like, wait, no, it's going to stay. It's like, wait, the countdown. It's like, okay, I'm going to count to 3. It's like, wait, what? You're going to do? Pow! It's like it just happens. You're like, dude. And then it's great comic timing from all the actors. That's the thing right there that sells it, is the timing from these guys is amazing.
Yeah, you definitely get their rapport with each other.
Oh, it's so genuine.
Mm-hmm. Madeline is arriving at home via her corporate limo. She gets out of the limo, is walking up to the house, and the driver tells her goodnight when she's about 15 steps away. She turns around, tells him goodnight, and at least she knows his name.
Yes.
I thought it would have been nice if she would have just said bye to him as she was getting out.
Yeah, I agree. Are they trying to show her in a good light?
She might be preoccupied thinking about her potential CEO position. Yeah, who knows?
I think she's still got that. She's still got that high going on.
Well, that Homelander situation also happened, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. That's right.
He told her all that stuff where you, and I agree, she got kind of scared. You suppose she got scared. I agree with that. And then the thing with Homelander went down.
I think she thinks that she's on top right now, though.
Okay. So,
do you think that now that she actually did the deed with him, that it's like, okay, now I'm in control again?
Maybe that was a control mechanism.
Because I think it was.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Good call. The house is really dark when she enters. She's calling out to the babysitter, Maria. She's kind of putting her keys down and purse down, and Butcher's sitting in a chair in the corner. He tells her that her kid is a sound sleeper. She starts looking around in fear. Butcher tells her not to worry. The baby's all right, and so is the nanny. The nanny's out back sleeping off a little bit of propofol. He tells Madeline to put her phone on the table. Madeline kind of comes over to where he is and puts the phone on the coffee table. She says, William Butcher, CIA showed me your file. What do you want? He tells her she knows what he wants. She says, I don't know how breaking into my home and threatening my child is going to get you, Homelander. Butcher says, all these years, I've been searching for that weakness. She tells him Homelander doesn't have any weakness. Butcher says, no. She continues, there isn't a weapon on Earth that they haven't thrown at him. They've all failed. Butcher tells her, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about you. She says, me? Butcher says, yeah, you're the only thing he gives two about. You're his weakness. She was kind of cocky at first, but that facade is starting to crumble. Once he tells her that.
Yeah. He's in her inner sanctum. I mean, that's got to be she's not expecting this. She's expecting to walk into the inner sanctum where you're safe and all your worries are gone. And there's Billy Butcher.
Back to the boys. Frenchie is leading them through the warehouse where they're being held. He's commenting on how it's a maze and says, where is she? They come up to a secured room. Frenchie can see Kimiko knocked out on a hospital bed. She's hooked up to medical equipment. She wakes up and sees Frenchie through the window. We hear shots and Frenchie is hit. Blood splatters all over the window. runs up and grabs him. A bunch of captors are bearing down on them. They take cover behind a cinder block wall. The boys do. Right. They take cover behind the cinder block wall in the middle of the warehouse. Frenchie's been hit in the shoulder, so one of his arms is kind of out of commission.
Yeah, but he doesn't even say anything when he gets popped with a gun, does he? I don't even think he says, ow.
No. MM's looking at Frenchie, and he says, aw, she better be worth it. Frenchie hands Huey the assault rifle he took off the guard and tells him to cover Huey tries to resist, but doesn't give him a chance. He just gets up and starts moving. Huey has to stand up real quick to cover him, and he's unloading, and as he's shooting, he kills one assailant, and he hits another one. And the whole time he's yelling, I'm sorry.
I love that he hits some people. That's pretty impressive. It's like, oh,
Yeah,
poor
yeah.
guy probably never even did.
One of them's a
That's
real solid hit.
yeah.
The other one seems to be like a graze, I want to say. It didn't look
Yeah.
as good as the first one, but
Oh.
he quickly runs out of bullets, as you do when you're firing on full auto.
Mhm.
Frenchie pulls a magazine out and he tells Huey to reload it. Huey starts yelling at him. He's like, "What the do I know about reloading a magazine?" Frenchie finally just helps him reload the gun and Huey's back in it. Frenchie looks over the wall, doesn't see MM. He starts yelling his name repeatedly. MM comes running around the corner with Kamiko thrown over his shoulders. Frenchie yells at Huey to cover him, and Huey starts shooting again. Again, he runs out of bullets, but MM manages to make it back to them without getting hit. He puts Kamiko down next to Frenchie, and she's kind of leaning against him. She still seems out of it.
Yeah.
As Huey was shooting, he was again yelling, "I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry."
And that is really funny because he just is like laying into, I'm sorry. It's like, it's really funny.
They have no guns or no bullets to defend themselves anymore. The captors move in and surround them. They've got them on their knees. They have them turn around and put their hands on their head. All of a sudden, a bright light shines behind them, and the captors start getting blasted. Starlight has come to the rescue. Nice. She's wearing her original outfit. Her eyes are glowing, and the sparks are raining around her. It looks incredible.
It looks great. And I love that she has the old costume, and she looks like a superhero. She looks great.
That's her. Whenever she's wearing the other one, you notice how she's acting.
Yes.
She's drinking, or she doesn't want to be there, or
trying to cover herself up, or here she's just she's herself.
The glowing eyes, man, it's so sick. And
it's
then
awesome.
Like the sparks look really cool. Yeah. Huey is surprised to see her. He looks really happy that she's there. He says, "You came." She says, "Like you said, I'm a superhero."
Yes, you are.
They're back to their kind of banter.
I love it. She is something else. I like her too. Her name is Erin Moriarty. She's really cute.
She does a good job.
Good. Fantastic.
They work their way out to some doors, and they're starting to leave when they hear A-Train. He says, "Holy." Frenchie, Kamiko, and MM have already exited the building. Huey starts closing the door behind them, telling them to go, that he'll be okay. Starlight starts moving towards A-Train. The camera does a close-up on his face. We can hear his heart pounding. He has a sheen of sweat on his face. He's not looking good.
No, he does not.
A-Train says Homelander was right. You are a rat. Oh, and you're the jailbreaker? Are you kidding me? His voice has a really high frequency to it, not his normal voice.
No, not at all.
He sounds, again, kind of manic.
He's
a little
very
bit.
Very something wrong. Very wrong.
Starlight tells him to turn around and walk away. She turns to Huey and tells him to go. Huey refuses, saying A-Train wants him, and he won't just leave her. Starlight looks at A-Train and asks him, "Please, just go." They have a bit of a standoff, and when A-Train doesn't leave, she decides to activate her powers. Her eyes light up. She, oddly enough, attacks first. A-Train dodges it with his speed. Actually dodges two of her attacks in quick succession. Then he manages to dodge multiple more attacks, and we have this really cool scene where time slows down, and he knocks Huey. Then he dodges multiple blasts from her, and she's almost stationary, and then he punches her in the chest, and she goes flying and speeds back up. And it's cool with the sparks just kind of hovering in the middle of the air. And
it's a neat scene. It's really neat.
Mm-hmm. Huey scrambles to his feet. A-Train walks up to him and says, "You killed the only person I've ever loved." Huey says, "I didn't kill her." A-Train is gulping in air now. He says, "I know. I did."
I was kind of shocked. I don't remember this the first time. I mean, I remember everything about this, but I don't remember him having that moment of self-realization that I did. Even though he's going to still blame Huey. He's for this one split second.
Yeah.
It's like he actually owns that he did it.
Again, we hear his heart pounding, and he's sweating worse than before. He continues. He says, "But it was your fault." And he grabs Huey's collar. Then suddenly he groans in pain. His heartbeat's accelerating. Then it stops, and he collapses to the ground, holding his chest as he falls. Huey says, "Holy." Starlight wants to know what's happening. Huey thinks A-Train's having a heart attack. A-Train exhales one last time and stops breathing. Huey says, oh, then starts checking A-Train's vitals. Then he starts performing CPR on him, and he tells Starlight to call an ambulance. She tells Huey the A-Train will never stop coming for him. Huey says he knows. What a good guy, man. Even though he knows the guy wants to kill him, he still doesn't want to see him die.
That's right. And I mean, we've talked about heroes, real heroes multiple times on this show. But seeing this guy try to save a man who murdered his girlfriend is truly what being a hero is.
Yeah.
I mean, this guy does not deserve this treatment from him. And, Huey would be almost right to let him die. But at the same time, it's like, Huey's like, no, I cannot stand to see anymore. You know what? It's also kind of reminiscent of the end of Blade Runner. Remember at the end, you've seen Blade Runner, the original, right?
Yes.
How Roy saves Harrison Ford at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Because all of a sudden it's that big love of life so much that he just wanted him to feel what he was feeling, but then he saves him as he dies.
Mm-hmm.
That's spectacular.
Do you think Huey just doesn't want to be responsible for anyone's death again after the translucent thing? Like he's done it once, realized that's not what he wants.
For a hot second there, he seemed to think that's what he wanted. Remember how he told MM in that van earlier in the season about, that was a real big deal. And then he says that's exactly what A-Train MM tells, Huey, that's the same kind of feeling that these guys get when they shoot that stuff up. So, he was kind of worried about Huey then. But Huey's come to where he needs to be, where he doesn't, I don't think he wants anyone else to get hurt. And I don't think he necessarily feels bad that he had to shoot those guys, but they would have killed him. But, he doesn't, anything that if he can help it from here, I think he'll try and stop people from getting killed if he can.
Yep, I agree. Starlight calls in the incident on her Vought-issued transponder that is sewn into her armband. Starlight tells Huey he needs to leave. She'll take over the CPR. He doesn't want to stop, but she convinces him, saying he'll get caught if he doesn't leave. So he looks at her for a moment, then he takes off. Butcher has put a vest on Madeline with a bunch of C4 attached to it.
That's a lot of C4.
It is. He's also holding onto a dead man's switch. They both hear the crack and whoosh of Homelander arriving outside. And there's this really creepy noises coming as Homelander lands on the roof. And you can hear the ceiling creaking as he's walking around upstairs.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's really creepy.
I like it. It's really good. Really well done. And it's still dark here too. That's what's also kind of adds that creep factor.
Yep. This whole scene is dark.
Yeah.
Butcher looks up and says, well, about time. I know you can see through the ceiling. You try to kill me, and my trigger finger goes soft. Now, why don't you stop playing RAPE Santa and come down and join us? I don't know what he means by that.
No, either. It's an interestingly strange picture, but yes.
Homelander walks into the room carrying Madeline's child. He is shushing Butcher. He tells Butcher to take it easy. They don't want to upset Teddy, right? Is that the first time we've heard his name?
I believe it is. We've seen the kid twice before, I think, and he's mentioned, but it's the baby is never addressed directly, I don't believe.
Madeline asks, what are you doing? Homelander points at her and says, hey, look, mommy. Then he asks her, you all right? She says, no. Homelander says, Madeline. She orders Homelander to take the baby upstairs. Homelander tells her, all good. I got it. He looks at Butcher and takes a deep breath. He says, Billy Butcher. You don't mind if I call you Billy, right? You're pretty darn impressive. Especially for, one of you. See, even now, most people standing where you are would be pissing their pants terrified. But you, sure, your heart's pounding, but you're not afraid. It's anger. That's a new one for me.
I imagine that it is a new one for him.
And most of the time it's fear, right?
Yeah, dude.
Teddy has started crying. Madeline again asks Homelander to take the baby upstairs. Homelander completely ignores Madeline. And still talking to Butcher, he says, all because of your lovely wife, Becca, right? Okay, let's cut the bull, huh? You know that he takes his fist and makes a thrusting motion. He holds up his hand innocently and says, bro, not my fault, okay? She came on to me. It happens.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, he's really goading him, you know?
Yes, he is.
Madeline asks Homelander to stop. Homelander doesn't miss a beat. You know, it's the fame. They get crushes. There's nothing I can do about it. But what I will tell you is she was a hell of a lay. Oh, he laughs. She came 3 times, eh? I mean, he's really pushing the limit here.
Oh, he's really trying to push those buttons hardcore.
Butcher has not responded to any of this. No. Just watching him.
Very icy stare.
Mm-hmm. Homelander pats the baby on the back, saying, all right, little man, have a little lie down. Good boy. He sets him in a crib. Madeline says she wants Homelander to take the baby out of here. Homelander brushes his hands off and looks at Butcher. He says, but that's not really it. No, 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 no. No, it's more than just that. You think I'm responsible for her death, don't you? So now you have a hostage that I care about, right? Someone I love. He takes his left hand and he puts it behind Madeline's head. Still addressing Butcher, he says, so what's your plan from here? What do you want? Do you want a confession or what's your end game? Butcher takes a step forward and says, I'm just going to hurt you. I mean, really hurt you. And that will be good enough for me. Homelander says, so you don't really want anything per se. You just want to blow her up in front of me, right? Wow. He's laughing. He's kind of stammering. He's just having trouble saying it. He says, you're dark, and I kind of like it.
Yeah, coming from that guy, that is no compliment.
Yeah, seriously.
That's about how dark he is.
Mm-hmm. Madeline asks again for Homelander to take Teddy upstairs. I mean, it was 6-7 times now.
Yes. I think she sees the writing on the wall.
Yeah, but I mean, with that much explosive, what's upstairs going to help?
Dude, you could go in the next county won't help. I don't think with that much explosives.
Homelander comforts her again, telling her it's okay. He asks Butcher to answer one question for him, just one. How do you know? How do you know? I mean, you must have some rock solid proof, right? That it was actually me who killed your wife. You must have that, right? So what is it? Share. We're all very interested. He whispers, now's not the time to be strong and silent. Go for it. Butcher has no response. He just looks down because he doesn't have any proof, right? They never confirmed that something happened to her.
Right.
Homelander says, are you telling me that this whole thing is based on feelings, on a hunch? Again, Madeline is asking for the baby to be taken upstairs. Homelander tells her to hold on. She starts yelling. He tells her to shut up.
That's a scary one.
He like screams at her, pointing at her. He turns to Butcher and says, excuse me. He walks over to Madeline. He bends over to look into her eyes and says, you promised me no more lies. You promised me. You and Vogelbaum should have got your stories straight. They were so close, so close. But there was a few little details that were different. So I went back to Vogelbaum and I managed to squeeze the truth out of him, the real truth.
I am curious about what he means. Do you think he put the squeeze to him truthfully? Like put the superpowered squeeze to him?
I'm not sure because I seem to have a memory of something from season 2, but I'm not 100%.
Yeah, see, I thought that's what I was. Yeah. Well, the reason I ask is that this is an old comic book flashback, but this involved one of the Supermen after Superman dies in the comic books, and one of these guys takes his place, and he captures a crook, and he's so cold blooded that he breaks the guy's arms, but he uses his fingers, just kind of mashes his arms.
Man.
It's like, okay, I can't kill you but I will maim you so you won't do this again. It's like, wow, you might would have liked that,
man.
But I just imagine Homelander doing that. He could do that too. I mean, he could turn your bones into dust between two fingers.
Yeah. One thing, when Homelander's clenching his fist here, the creaking of the leather.
Oh yeah,
is
I love that you can hear that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how I love it.
It reminds me, do you ever see the movie Lady Hawk?
Yes, but I mean, it's been when it was probably, it would have been in the 90s when it was out.
That movie, the Rutger Hauer, he was kind of the good knight in that, right?
That's
And
2 Rutger Hauer mentions tonight. Good job. I did Roy from Blade Runner.
That's right.
That's Rutger Hauer there.
Yeah.
Nice. I love it. And ladies and gentlemen, Rutger Hauer has passed, dude. I love that guy. I'm so sad that he died.
Oh, that's sad.
R.I.P. Rutger Hauer. It was like last year or maybe the year before. But yeah.
R.I.P. Yeah.
R.I.P. He was I love that dude, man. Did you ever see The Hitcher?
No, I haven't seen that one.
He was horrifically menacing in that show. He's wonderful. He was wonderful.
The reason I mentioned Lady Hawk was so the armor he had on, it was leather armor, and the creaking of the leather in that was so prominent.
Okay.
In the soundtrack, you could hear it any little motion. He's sitting on the saddle with the horse. Yeah, that's an interesting movie. I have to go back and watch it.
I was always down for any sword and sorcery kind of stuff in the 80s and 90s, because as a kid there just wasn't that much of that stuff. Yeah, we didn't have the MCU growing up. I had to be 50 or I had to be early 40s and mid 40s till we had the MCU for myself. So, we had to just take what we got. Because isn't Lady Hawk, is that not Matthew Broderick in there as well?
He is. Yeah. The mouse.
Isn't he like his page or something? Oh, the mouse. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I guess he is kind of acting as his page, you could say.
Okay.
He escapes from a prison. He kind of gets tied up with Rutger Hauer, who has been cursed by this. I think he's a bishop, because the bishop's in love with Rutger Hauer's love. And then they are cursed where he is a wolf at night.
Oh,
and she can be human at night, but then during the day he's human and she's
the hawk.
Right? Yeah. The hawk. And so they can never actually they're together, but they can't be together because they're like in animal form.
Dude, I need to see that again. It's been so long, I've completely forgotten that.
Yeah, and they have some really pretty horses in that. Yeah. It's kind of medieval themed, but I don't know what time period it's based on, or I guess it would be French. I think that's kind of like aristocracy that it's based on.
It might be.
Yeah, that's what that creaking leather glove from Homelander makes me think of.
Okay, stay on target.
Yep. Madeline starts crying. She's freaking out that Homelander's not taking the baby out of the room. Now he's confronting her about her lying. Homelander says, yes, that's it. He whispers something in her ear that we can't make out. She says, I'm so sorry. I should never have lied to you. I know now that you don't need to be protected. I'm so sorry. Will you please take Teddy upstairs? I really don't know what to make of her.
Yeah.
She flips on a dime so often.
She does.
That you don't know if it's self-preservation or she just doesn't have the upper hand right now. So she's going to say what she needs or do what she needs to get the upper hand in the situation.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, she's doing everything she can to try and manipulate this into her favor, or maybe at least to a favorable position for her child. Maybe she cares enough. I will say this. I think we have it took this for us to finally see real care for the child, I think. Mm-hmm. She actually shows that she cares.
Homelander stands up. He's exhaling slowly as he does. He asks her, did you ever really care about me? She says, you mean everything to me. He shakes his head saying, no. I mean everything to your job. You care more about that baby than you do about me.
Wow. What does he expect?
Yeah, seriously. I mean, that's her offspring.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Crazy. That's where you see it. You see how crazy he is.
Yeah. She says, no, I love you. I love you. I love you. I swear I love you. Now we definitely know she's lying. She's just at this point just trying to get out of what she thinks is going to happen here.
Absolutely.
He says, but tell me the truth or I walk out right now. She says, I'm scared. I'm scared of you. He asks, what? She repeats that she's scared. He asks, of? She says, of you. I'm scared of you. I guess he really didn't hear her the first time very well. She said it very quietly. He thanks her for finally being honest. He puts his hands on both sides of her head. He kisses her, then he rests his forehead on hers. He sighs deeply, then he kisses her on the forehead. He pulls his face back from hers about 6 inches or so.
Yeah.
And then he activates his heat vision, burning her eyes out, then burning through her skull. And that is, I was going to say, the most gruesome death on the show so far, but then I remember the guy that had taken over that floor in the building and he put his fist in his chest. I think that was worse for me to
also
watch.
This episode, him crushing that dude's head after cutting his legs off and slowly crushing that guy's head, even though we don't see it.
Right.
Because as nasty as this one is, it's quick. It's pretty fast. I mean, he burns her brain completely out. There ain't nothing. That skull is empty, so he burned it out in a matter of seconds. So it was not super long that she didn't suffer, other than after having not suffering with your legs cut off, waiting for your head to be crushed.
Yeah, we see Butcher watching this entire thing. And imagine you're in his shoes right now. What are you feeling? Your leverage has just been taken from you.
Yes. I imagine it's like, I love the fact that he just he just goes for it right away. He knows it. He sees it. And it's like, oh, crud. Okay, well.
Yeah.
Goes for the detonator.
I mean, I think he
no other option.
He was expecting to die coming here.
He was. Yeah, this was a suicide mission.
Yeah. Homelander takes a deep breath. He menacingly turns to Butcher and says, "Now, what was that plan again?" Butcher smiles and says, "Oh, well." He releases the dead man trigger, causing the explosion to occur. Teddy was still in that room with them.
I'm going to assume so.
That's pretty harsh, man.
That is harsh, but from what we see, I'll add something maybe, but I'm just going to say I think so. He obviously was he would let that baby die. He was mad that woman loved that baby more than him. Why wouldn't he let that baby die?
Yeah. The screen goes white. Now, I did not particularly feel that much tension in this scene. No. I think part of the reason I was not as impacted by this as some other ones was because I don't particularly like any of the characters in this scene.
Okay.
Now, what I mean by that is
you have no emotional connection to them?
Yeah. I mean, in their own way, they're all kind of monsters.
Yes. What you mean, Butcher and Homelander?
Well, Madeline.
Yes, I agree. You mean in that house? I'm sorry.
In that house. Yeah. So the baby's the only innocent there. Let's put it that way.
Baby's the only innocent there. Yes.
Madeline's not necessarily a monster. She's just a manipulator, right?
She is.
And then Butcher's just an asshole. I don't like the way he treats his friends.
Right.
Homelander is a monster.
Homelander is a monster.
Right. So
he is the monster in the movie, in this show for sure.
And when I just think about, I'm not emotionally attached, so it's hard for me to really get into.
No, I'm in a way I'm kind of glad to see Madeline go. She's a character I didn't like. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't. And again, just because I don't like somebody, this was a hard lesson for me to learn as a person who likes a lot of television and movies. Is that sometimes I have a hard time disconnecting of the actress or actor from the role. This happened to me with Glenn Close after Fatal Attraction in particular. I thought she was a nut job. It's like, she's just a dadgum good actress. She scared the crud out of me. It's like, and so I'm like, I always thought she's crazy because she's so believably crazy in that movie. I'm like, oh my gosh, she's really crazy. It's like, no, she's just a great actress. And so that's kind of part of that. She's been that character. She's been Elizabeth Shue has played her role expertly in this. She's been great. Mm-hmm. She's obviously doing something right to be able to juggle this guy, but she had lost him long ago. She lost him long ago, and she only realized that she lost him at the same time we did.
Right. After the screen goes white, we see a sprinkler watering a lawn. It is daytime again. Butcher is lying on his back. He looks a little worse for wear. He's got some bruising and kind of red stuff on his face.
Not so bad for walking out of a building with, we assume, several bricks of C4 going off.
Yeah. I'm curious how that played out.
Yeah. I'm curious if Homelander saved the kid. Yeah. I don't think he would have, though.
Homelander walks up to him, greeting him. "Wakey, wakey. Hey, buddy. you were out for quite a while. You can thank me for saving you sometime later, but for now, time to get up. Come on, you're going to love this. He waves at him to come with him.
There's the flip I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Butcher's always telling you, you're going to love this.
Yeah.
Well, you're going to love this. You know,
I didn't put that together until you said it. That's funny.
That's what I'm talking about. All these parallels, because
Yeah.
I had written this already, and I was like, you see these, they do this a lot. You're like, oh my goodness, that's great, man.
Mm-hmm.
I love that.
They hear a door open, and a kid about 8 years old runs out of the house. Homelander greets him, saying, "Wow, look at this handsome devil. Hey, pal, you know who I am?" The boy responds, "Homelander." Homelander laughs, saying, "Yeah, that's right, but you know who else?" Then we see Becca walk out from behind a tree. And what a plot twist that is.
Oh, you know, I'm taken back to the first time I've watched this. I think this might be my third time to have watched this first season.
Mm-hmm.
When that ending happened, my first concern was that, oh my goodness, it's such a brutal cliffhanger to leave us on. But we had all of our strings and we had everything tied up nicely.
Mm-hmm.
But it's at the same time there was a little bit of a cliffhanger, and but that always gives you hope that that there would be a season 2, and it of course was. We're talking about there being a season 4 now, even though season 3 just is still coming out. So they had anticipations for this show, and it's great. I mean, I was so excited, but it was like, oh my goodness, it would kill me having to wait another year.
Yeah. So to Homelander's question of, you know who else I am, the boy says no. Becca sees Homelander, then she looks down and meets eyes with Butcher. He still hasn't fully stood up yet, but he sees her and he says, "Becca?" Homelander, he's speaking to the boy, says, "Oh, mommy didn't tell you. Well, I'm your father and we are a family." And the boy's eyes light up red momentarily. Mm-hmm. Becca looks super stressed, not happy to see Butcher at all, really. And Butcher still hasn't stood up, and he's just looking at her. He's not even smiling.
Well, imagine the shock. I mean, he's been thinking that she's either wandered off and killed herself, or she's dead, or maybe alive for 8 years, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And so and I think through this season, he's kind of. I feel like this season, with Huey's help, where they split the party up, almost like Huey almost made him come to the realization that it's like it's not going to bring this girl back. And I feel like he almost had given her up for dead, like he was going to kill himself.
Mm-hmm.
At Madeline's place, and then all of a sudden to still be alive, and then to see the woman that he loves, he's thought dead or whatever, or worse, and here she is. Mm-hmm. It's really confusing for both of them, I imagine.
Yeah,
man, what a great ending to this season, right?
Yeah, it was quite the cliffhanger for sure.
Man, great season ender.
Yeah,
great season in total.
It was.
What a great show.
Yeah. It's a great introduction to the boys. Had some, like we mentioned, the first episode that we were doing the podcast, the cinematography is great. The soundtrack's great. The way they cut it together, the humor intermixed with the tragedy and the violence.
Dude, it's an amazing show. Every aspect of the show is Amazon, man. This is the only people that spend as much money is going to be Netflix. Mm-hmm. And their products look just as good. That Stranger Things stuff looks just as amazing. But this actually looks.
HBO Max has some good shows too. Yeah,
but they do, but I think in particular that this show, man, this show is just really good, and I just love it. I just have such a good time talking about it with you.
Yeah, it's great. Looking forward to going through season 2 and 3.
Yeah,
should be fun.
Absolutely, it's going to be super exciting. It'll be my first time through 3. I've seen 1 and 2 a couple times, but this will be. I'm looking forward as we get to number 3 together. That's going to be real fun, dude.
Oh yeah,
because it's going to be a surprise for both of us.
We go into each episode. Look at what happened. Like just with a fresh set of eyes. That should be fun. Yeah,
that's going to be real fun, dude. That's going to be super exciting.
Any final takeaways from the season that you wanted to talk about?
No, great season. Just had just a total blast talking about this, and I'm like I say, I look forward to season 2 and 3 and to whatever else we want to talk about, man.
Yeah, I particularly enjoyed the people that, like Starlight, that became her true self. Yes. She decided to be a hero. I like Maeve's redemption arc.
And see Huey step up too.
Huey stepped up. He's grown immensely throughout this season.
Yeah, he's definitely one of the boys now. Yeah.
And Frenchie, awesome, of course.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Those guys, dude. What a great guy. What a great show. Great show.
Yeah.
I guess the only thing to ask you is on a personal question is I'm a kind of guy that likes to ask people, where would you rate this? And I don't know if you want to use the 1 through 10 or the 5-star system, but how do you rate this on a, let's say, a 1 through 10 scale?
Oh man, I'd have to put some serious thought into that. Okay. So the good news is there's nothing I dislike about it, really.
Right. Well, I'm the same way. I kind of, well, the reason that when I use the 5-star rating system, I actually take that from, because my mother sparked this interest in film critique in me when I probably about 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of looked into this, and she bought me one of the film guides that was called the Video Hound, and it had a list of every movie made from the beginning of movies until the current time of 2000. And it had a little review of each movie, and it would list like 1 through 5, or a wolf, which was just dreadful, but they were bones and not stars, but it was the same equivalent. And so you could take a movie that's a wolf, which is, don't see this movie. 1 is like a bad movie. 2 is not the best, but if you're a fan of the genre, maybe acceptable. 3 is decent. 4 is great. And 5, you're telling people in the street about it.
Interesting.
Now, boys, kind of 5. I tend to rate things with the 5-star system because I like that. Because boys is one that I got all the management at Fry's to watch because they hadn't heard of it or watched it, and then they're like, man! And every manager, all those guys that we all know, the store, everybody watched it at the same time I did. They're like, man, this show's great, thanks. And so it just, they loved it, man. And so I shared it with people because I was just like, you got to watch this show; it's ridiculous. So I told people about it.
Well, I don't know if we could.
So I rated it as a 5, or I'd give it a 9. I wouldn't give it a 10, but I'd give it a 9 on a 10-star rating system, though.
I like the 5-star rating. That makes it a little bit easier to decide on it. And I would say,
I think so too.
On this show, I don't think we should cover anything but 5s.
You know what? I think you're correct.
The reason I say that is with the depth that we go into, we're putting our hearts into this stuff, right?
Yeah. And we are telling strangers about this.
And we are telling people through 30 hours of content for one season that you should watch this show and then listen to 3 hours of excruciating detail about the show. And I can't imagine myself doing that for anything less than a 4, but
yeah,
likely that should be our standard. If we can't rate it a 5, why would we do it?
Good call. 5 it is.
Excellent. I will give it a 5.
So are we going to start calling this the 5-star podcast then? Okay, sorry. We will not change it. But yeah. Great episode, dude. Great episode.
Yeah, great. All right, thanks, man. And we'll see you next week for
next Sunday.
Season 2. Yeah.
Yeah.
We thank you all for joining us today.
Again, we really like to thank you for taking the time to be with us, and we've had a really great time talking about the topic today.
If you would like to support our show, you can find us at horsefrogproductions.com, where you can find our Patreon link. Depending on the platform you're listening from, it may also be in the episode description.
And if you'd like to contact us through email, it's at contact@horsefrogproductions.com.